Anti-establishment historians tend to be an unpopular lot, and my own works will undoubtedly serve to reinforce this attitude by those who have published garbage adorned as history. It is my intent to make enemies, to topple their cherished pillars, to silence those charlatans who have sold their fictions off as facts. My mission is to educate those willing to know. I have no doubt I will lock horns with many along the way. The materials that I offer in my books are for those who are unafraid of the dark, who want the truth undiluted, direct. The ancient past, behind the scenes happenings throughout all time periods, censored histories, the academic cover-ups, real facts about race, religion, subversive societies, and even predictive systems of analysis by which future events can be known beforehand or uncovered and explained. Archaics is for the public domain to come to a place where they can receive information that has not been diluted. It has not been censored. You're not going to like some of the things you hear. Some of the many videos are going to tick you off. They're disturbing. The core things that we have been taught since we were introduced into this world have to be peeled back layer by layer by layer for us to fully comprehend the absolute medium of deception that we are totally immersed within. Our world is not what you think it is, but it is a beautiful place. It's all a matter of perception. But where we've been in the past in the collective, as a species, as a race, and where we have traveled in the past up until the present, in our personal lives, has everything to do with where we're going. One who is properly informed is not easily deceived. The fact that so much energy has been expended in covering up the truth about our past can only mean that, though we are blind to it, we must be such a threat to our controllers that burying the past was the only recourse they had in maintaining their power. Or, said another way, we are more than we suppose ourselves to be. Yeah, man. Let's get that audio check done. Get that off my screen right there. All right. This coffee's so good. So we have some ground to cover today. You know, from the inception of my public, you know, I guess my YouTube channel, almost 7 years. One of the hallmarks has always been to show you that this is a cyclical historical pattern that we are experiencing. And I've said it so many times that it only takes us 200 years to go from horse and buggy to Hadron Collider. In the entire history of the human experience is a very well documented pattern of reset. Yeah, I've been doing some Monday night ones pretty much regularly lately, actually. I used to never do anything on Mondays, but I think I have quite a bit the past couple of months. Thank you, Catherine. Oh, we got some good stuff. We got some. It's story time. I ordinarily, I ordinarily like overwhelm you guys with all kinds of citations and books, and in one presentation you might see 100 to 200 actual photos of old book citations, and I always have you follow along with me, but not this time. This time it's story time, putting everything together, because these type of presentations are absolutely necessary. Not everybody learns the same way. So, get my little mouse over here, waiting for a few more people to pile in here, and then we're going to go on a ride. for you archaics veterans, you definitely have something new here. We may have evidence of another vapor canopy. So it's starting to look like these vapor canopies are about 200 to 276 years. The smaller, weaker ones might be, well, we've definitely got evidence of two 25-year darknesses. That's a long time. 25 years is a long time for the sun to be obscured by a canopy. All right. So if you want to join us in San Diego, I know Allie's gonna post the tickets here because somebody already said Allie doesn't sleep. I think in the UK a bunch of them don't sleep. I don't know how they do it. I thought Allie was in the chat, but if not, oh yeah, she is. Allie, would you please post the link to the tickets? Yeah, there it is right there. If you want to join us, we're gonna have a blast. It's gonna be 2 days. I'm not really doing meetups like I used to. I mean, I've been everywhere. Did 2 meetups in Asheville, Las Vegas, Tampa, Virginia Beach. So, for a few of those meetups, I just fly in. But this meetup here in San Diego, we're going to go to some type of out restaurant, kiosk type deal. All hang out. The typical 8, 9, 10 hours at the venue, and then go hang out at a restaurant and whatever. But the very next day, we already have a predisclosed location, a beach, San Diego Beach. We're gonna go hang out. It's got kiosks and restaurants within walking distance. We're just gonna hang out all day at the beach. So, and then that night we're probably all gonna get in some trouble too. Well, I don't know, man. It's if you want to come hang out with us, this isn't a typical meetup. This is me meeting and greeting people, talking about whatever, hugs, photo opportunities. I'm not bringing any merchandise. I'm not trying to sell you anything. This is just a meet and greet and come hang out, find out whoever. We got people flying in from all over the world. Every meetup, I've got people flying in all over the world. So you're going to meet some awesome people. And also a lot of local San Diego people. And some from Los Angeles. I do know that we have a few people that have been on my channel that are coming, and you know their names, and you'll see them when you get there. Popular names that you know, people I've had as guests on my channel, they'll be there too. But yeah, we're just gonna have a blast. We're gonna just have some fun, and of course, I'll go spend time with Paul at the book tree. That's the whole reason for going to San Diego, really. So I can go hang out over there. I wanted to do one in LA, but it's just like, damn, man, it's hard getting in and out of LA, and so there's too many damn people there anyway. Thank you, Annie. I do appreciate that. So the actual citations and data sets are spread throughout my channel and my published books. We're not going to get into them now. I'm always bogging you guys down with the actual citations from books and showing you the images and telling you where they come from and getting books off the shelves and showing you stacks of, you know what? We don't need to do that. This is story time. This is putting everything together. You can watch those other presentations. I have fantastic mods who know my material. And if I'm talking about a certain topic and you're really curious about it, they can post the link in the live chat. They do it all the time. But the history of the world that we have uncovered in archaics and we have fully documented and shown by many species of chronological analysis is not the history of the world that most people know. So we have an event positively dated for the year 3895 BC. The Judeo-Christian world has been led to believe that this was the beginning. They even wrote a book, Genesis, that uses this period as the creation, and they're totally wrong. Because the story of Adam and Eve, the tree, the serpent, is a reset story. It's even embedded in the text of Genesis itself. See, the Jews were in Babylon they were studying the Babylonian cuneiform tablets, however you pronounce it. They came across references to the Adamu, and they came across references to 930, and they saw this over and over, and they had turned concepts about the pre-flood world that were reviewed in these temple libraries and turned them into pronouns. So simple. That's what they did. The word Adamu in Akkadian is just mankind. But the Jewish scribes turned it into a pronoun, and they turned it into Adam. They took Kava, the female, as opposed to the male, and turned it into a pronoun as well. Eve, the female name. So these texts told of the people who in sorrow roam, and they were cursed people. So they invented this they invented this narrative of a Cain and an Abel and how Cain got cursed because they read about the people called the Kainu. This is Kainu. The Kainu race of people before the flood were cursed. And they were literally called in the Babylonian records the people who in great sorrow roam. But the Jews didn't understand what they were reading. They were reading about a vast destruction of a 930-year-old civilization that came to an end so perfectly that the survivors were shocked. They were naked. They were bereft of their infrastructure. It probably happened at night. They had no clothes. They had no tools. Nothing. All they did was survive it, and there was only a few survivors. The destruction was so cataclysmic, the sky and the world around them had changed. So they thought it was a new heavens and a new earth. And only over 1,000 years later did they turn it into a creation event, a new beginning. And they called it year one of the world, which came down to us as 1 Anno Mundi. In the older Latin, it's Annus Mundi. But in our calendar, as we've shown many times in our case, it's not even debatable. We've already proven this over and over and over in many different presentations. Year one was 3895 BC. When this event happened, a 930-year-old civilization came to an end. The survivors were people like Adam and Eve. The people who in great sorrow roam weren't the Cainites of Genesis. They were the Kainu, the survivors of this epic cataclysm. This cataclysm brought a vapor canopy. These people were unable to do anything at that time. Humanity had been reset. We know virtually nothing about this period before, other than traditions call them a pre-human race. Many people who follow the Bible, all going back even before Finis Jennings Dake, who did a lot of theorizing on the biblical text, showing a pre-Adamic race, is found in the Bible. He called them the pre-Adamites. But in the Middle East, they were called the Jinn. And the Jinn were the ones left behind from that race from ancient times. It's a pre-human culture, a pre-human race that was here, and their entire world was ended in a cataclysm. So the story of Genesis and Adam and Eve is a reset story. It's 3895 BC, and it was caused by what we know here in Archaics as the Phoenix. It was the Typhon of the ancient world that destroyed that. So we have this enigma. Our beginning is actually the end of a former world for which we know nothing about. We know nothing about. But the destruction of that world was so perfect that every race and culture after that sought that time period to be the beginning of a whole new world, a whole new yuga, a whole new age, a whole new epic in the human experience. In Genesis, it started the pre-flood world. The antediluvian world of 1,656 years began on this date, 3895 BC, caused by the phoenix. There are two creation stories in Genesis, and there are also two different flood accounts given in the book of Genesis as well. Lots of scholars have noticed this. In one, God created the greater light and the lesser light, one to rule the sky at night and one to rule by day. But it wasn't called a sun and a moon. It was called a greater light and a lesser light. The reason is because when this event occurred, a vapor canopy covered the sky. During the daytime, the sun was not seen. At nighttime, the moisture in the mesosphere would condense, creating like a magnification lens. So the greater light that ruled was actually the moon, not the sun. The sun was a lesser light because it puts off heat. When it passed over the canopy would fog up in cloud during the day, and the sky would be like a dark purple light. They couldn't see the sun. It was just a light. It was the lesser light. Bright light was at nighttime because the moon was brilliant, because the mesosphere, when it had cooled and the water droplets suspended in the mesosphere condensed, it created a magnification event to where our ancestors literally left us traditions that they thought the stars were so close they could hear them singing, and if they could find a hill high enough, they may even be able to ascend the hill and reach up and touch the stars. The stars were brilliant, they were magnified in the heavens, and the moon filled the night sky because the sky itself curved. 2 or 3 miles thick moisture mesosphere created a magnifier into the night sky. Under that canopy was a high pressure environment, and humans grew differently. The skulls would become long under high pressure. Wounds would heal very fast. We already know from other studies done by scientists in Glen Rose, Texas, that we know that amphibians, reptiles, insects, anything that can be changed on a parthenogenetic level grew to huge sizes under this canopy. This increase in pressure, ambient radiation, also a real light gamma. It's not the real harmful gamma radiation, but a light gamma radiation would create the necessary parthenogenetic changes. Not air pressure, ultraviolet light. The conditions were absolutely perfect, and everything thrived. Veritable jungles grew quick and fast and in a hurry. Open cuts could heal in minutes. Deep flesh wounds, like spear points and knife wounds, they could heal in days. Yeah, it was a totally different, extremely enriched oxygen and nitrogen. It was a different world. I am not a scientist. I am merely relating as best as I can the 4 scientific books on vapor canopy ecology and environmental studies that I have shown you guys on my channel. I will bring those books back to your attention because I have 3 more books on vapor canopy to divulge. Now, this is how basically the Bible started. The Bible history begins not with the creation event, but with the destruction so perfect the survivors thought it was a new heavens and a new earth. That's the beginning. The destruction leaves behind a ruined sky to them because they lived in a world of sunlight. They lived in the world we live in, but their world was gone. And now they lived in a vapor canopy world, and reptiles, amphibians, that's why the serpent is in the story. Reptiles and amphibians became very dangerous during this period. Didn't last long. But also during this period, the marsupials, mammals, placentals that were on the surface when this event occurred did not change. But their offspring, live-born marsupials and mammals under these new conditions thrived. Not the parents who were born before the vapor canopy appeared, but once the vapor canopy was intact, mammals and marsupials, their offspring grew to enormous sizes. Human offspring during this period grew to gigantic sizes. You guys know here in Archaics, we have gone through the difference between titans, giants, and ordinary humans. You're going to be gaslit by a lot of people. Some people I've had a lot of respect for in the past until I just outgrew them. And they're still pushing these narratives, but they're not true. We'll get to it in a minute about the origin of giants. But this is the beginning. This is the beginning of history according to every model that we have. This is how it started. The Native Americans talk about the period of the Great Purple Light. We find Cro-Magnon. We find all these different versions of Cro-Magnon, and they are always forced fit into a uniformitarian framework of history that misdates them, creates anachronisms where they shouldn't be, and is total bullshit. But we find advanced people with advanced art, wearing advanced clothing, with advanced burial techniques that show great sentimentality. And we call them primitive. We call them Cro-Magnon. But that's how we find the first people, large people. The men lived a sedentary life. We know this because they were 6 foot tall, 6'2", 6'4". They had huge, long skulls, but they had short arms. They had thin fingers, long legs. That's the skeletal structure of someone who has lived a sedentary life for a while. And they are the son and daughter of someone who had lived a sedentary life. And they are the son and daughter of the grandsons and daughters of you understand what I'm saying. A sedentary life is one of relaxation. You're not doing a hard physical labor. Unlike the Cro-Magnon, which were feral, and their skeletal structure shows that. But Cro-Magnon bone middens have been found. And among those bone middens, we have found that Neanderthal were eating Cro-Magnon. This has all been proven. Teeth marks, knife marks, and all that. Something happened to the sophisticated, advanced world of the Cro-Magnon, where they were hunted by the more primitive Neanderthal and eaten because they could no longer defend themselves. Prior to that, they could. Something happened to the world, and the last of the Cro-Magnon faded out into obscurity because they were hunted and eaten during this period, and the last Cro-Magnon were found in caves hiding. What does the book of Revelation say that the people are going to do when the Phoenix comes back? Where are they going to be found? In the mountains, in the dens, and in the caves, hiding from the face of the one that appears in the sky. It's the Phoenix. You guys know, you can read it for yourself in the Apocalypse. It is the 6th seal of the book of Revelation. The sun goes black as sackcloth of hair. The moon turns red as blood. Stars fall from the sky, and the whole sky rolls like a scroll. So this is the same event. It's happened multiple times in our past. This is why the book of Revelation isn't prophecy. It is a historical text, and it's a template by which those who know what they're reading understand that it only becomes prophecy because the past is a predicate for the future. It's going to happen again because it's already happened multiple times. This is why prophetic material is often written in past tense, and historic material is often written in future tense. So this is the beginning. That's my intro. Now we're going to get into the video. I'm long-winded on my intros. If you're new to my channel, I'm long-winded on my intros, but I just gave you Genesis. And now we're going to move forward through history to the present day so we can understand what it is we're facing 14 years from now. The coffee I'm on right now, you guys know I grind my own coffee beans, it's called Houstonian blend. It's a local for Houston right here. Houstonian blend is delicious. It's got like just a light. It's like Colombian, but it's got a real faint cinnamon. So good. So good. Okay. All right. Knickers, I don't think that's a scenario. I'm gonna put your deal up here. But Knickers says, does a baby grow in the womb to giant baby proportions and split the woman open before it's born? No, absolutely not. Many people who are gigantic in stature, 6'4", 6'5", are born from women that are 5'2", 5'3". No, absolutely not. Yeah. Oh, when we're talking about giants here in archaics, we are not talking about the fantasy versions of 15, 17, 18, 19, 20, 25 foot tall people. You can leave that into the Judeo-Christian conversations. I'm not going with any of that. Yeah. The giants that we have really confirmed is about 10 to 12 feet, 12 foot at the max. And we've covered this multiple times in archaics. This is not the time for it. Vapor canopy. The book of Genesis starts with a greater light and a lesser light to rule the night and the day. Remember, the day in Genesis, the day begins at night. The day does not begin. Remember, this is in Genesis. And the evening and the morning was the next day. And the evening and the morning was the next day. Why? Why was the evening to the morning the first way ancients factored time? It's a day count system. It's the oldest calendar system known to man. But it was nighttime first and then the day. Why? I've already told you why. You were listening to me about 10 minutes ago when I said it. Because the world was destroyed and a vapor canopy had replaced the sky. So at nighttime was when all the light was out because the moon was super bright. During the daytime, it was a dark purple light because the sun passed over the mesosphere and the heat of the sun clouded up the mesosphere and it just there's no way to see the stars. There's no way to see the sky, blue sky. You can't see anything. You can't see nothing but thick vapor canopy with a light going over it. And this is what created this ambient purplish light by day. This is why the Genesis is written the way it is. And the evening and the morning was the second day. And the evening and the morning was the third day. And so on. The night came before the day. This is why the Jews, even today, consider the beginning of the day when the sun goes down. When the sun goes down, that starts the day. The night comes before the day. This is because when all these traditions were adopted, it was during a vapor canopy world. When we're not under a vapor canopy world, these things do not make sense. Like a lot of the Jewish feasts, they don't make sense. Process them in a vapor canopy world, and you start to understand many of the legends, traditions, folklores, and stories of the ancient world. They all begin to make sense now. Like the Amarna period, the craziest interruption to Egyptian religion that's ever happened. We'll talk about that in a minute. So we move on because the vapor canopy appears to have remained until a significant event which began civilization in the ancient world. It is a year that we have talked about hundreds of times in archaics. I'm going to run out of coffee. I'm going to be so ticked. You guys know the date. The date is 3439 BC. A great flood destroyed 1/3 of the human race dead. After 1/3 of the world died in flooding because of Nemesis X. Nemesis X appeared in the sky, and guess what happened? A vapor canopy collapsed. What did Enki say in the Sumerian text? When he approached the land, he saw there was much flooding. This is what's in the text. He also said, verily do the reptiles abound. Remember, I showed this too, just like the Colburn Bible says. Every time the doom shape appears in the sky, there's damn reptiles everywhere. What's the connection? How did that happen? We'll get to that. 3439 BC. This is your first pre-flood vapor canopy, but it collapsed. And when it collapsed, it started the period of Vulcan. We've talked about this. In the Phoenician records, the period of Vulcan was 1200 years. What else was 1200 years? Oh, that's right. An accurate understanding of the day count system that was used in the pre-flood world when the evening and the morning was the next day. It's a turning of the stars. The evening and the morning is the second day, and the third day, a day count system. Now it makes sense because we are told Enki appeared 432,000 shars before the Great Flood that exterminated humanity when another vapor canopy collapsed. It was called the day the sky fell. But 432,000 stars is just turning of the stars. 432,000 turnings of the stars is only 1,200 years exactly. And anybody can get their phone out and you can take out a Sumerian year of 360 days and you can multiply it by 1,200 years, and you're going to get precisely 432,000 days. This same number appears in the Hindu yugas as the Kali Yuga. It is exactly 3 Mayan Bactans of 144,000 days each. This is the period of time from the appearance of the Anunnaki gods before the flood to the next flood, the Typhon flood that exterminated humanity. So 3439 BC is 1,200 years before 2239 BC. All the chronology fits perfectly, whether you factor it as days or you factor it as years. And the Phoenician records perfectly line up. The period of Vulcan was 1,200 years before the flood. Vapor canopy collapsed in 3439 BC, and Enki appears, who is a navigator for the Anunna in a fleet of ships carrying almost all Anunnaki men. The Anunnaki are not what Billy Carson tells you, or Zechariah Sitchin. The Anunnaki were merely technologically advanced humans that had come from somewhere else. But wherever they came from, they were too far to go back to get their women and their children. Or maybe they were a military detachment that were so far out at sea that by the time they got back, the Nemesis X cataclysm that happened in 3439 BC had ruined their homeland. It was gone. But to the ancient Sumerians, these men, the Anunna, arrived on shore by ship. They were bearded. They had technology, and the story is perfectly preserved in the Book of Enoch as the arrival of the Watchers. And the legend attached to the Watchers is that they had come down from a divine mountain. Where are all the entrances and exits for underground cities and military bases? Dumbs? They're in mountains. The Watchers come out and they have technology. How do we know? Because the book of Enoch is very specific. It is the tale of a cargo cult phenomenon. The book of Enoch is very specific. The Watchers traded tools, weapons, knowledge, philosophy, the sciences, herbalism, everything. They traded all this, and all they wanted were human females. They didn't want to sacrifice them. They don't want to do all that. This wasn't gods having sex with human females to give birth to giants. None of that pertains. The book of Enoch is about how the Watchers came down and they traded knowledges to a more Neolithic culture. They may have been called Watchers for the same reason Asiatics always portray white people with big round eyes, because the Sumerians regarded themselves with pride, calling themselves the black-headed people. And they had long, straight black hair and black eyes, or dark brown eyes. And they had olive skin that could grow no facial hair. They couldn't grow any hair. So to see these new people, they literally called them dragon-faced. Dragon-faced means they had a beard. This is the tradition of the dragon kings of China, which in the Chinese chronology perfectly matches the Sumerian chronology of the 8 kings of the Anunnaki, right before the flood. In the Chinese version, the dragon kings were before the flood. In the Sumerian version, the 8 kings of the Anunnaki were before the flood. Everything matches perfectly, as I've shown all throughout Archaics. But we have this second cataclysm. 3439 BC, vapor canopy collapses. When the vapor canopy collapses, mankind is primitive, Neolithic, and now they are shoved into a world where they have to work. Because for 450 years since the canopy was in place, they could just pick their food off of plants. Everything grew to astonishing sizes. It was a Garden of Eden world that they lived in under the vapor canopy world. So they almost had no clothes. They were living Neolithic lifestyle. There was no reason to build walls and cities, none of that stuff. But now, Nemesis X ended that world. Vapor canopy collapsed. 1/3 of the world's population perished in flooding because the canopy collapsed. Now that the canopy collapsed, the sun is out baking the world. It's a whole new environment people had to get through. And once the sun appeared, all of a sudden a fleet of ships appears, and it's Enki and the dragon-faced, whatever you want to call them, warlords. They were called the Anuna by the Sumerians, but they were just technologically advanced humans that had everything that the Neolithic people didn't have. They probably came from underground facilities because the texts do say that they came out of a holy mountain initially, and then they were on fleets of ships that landed at a place called Dilmun. That might have been Bahrain. And then from Dilmun, they sent their ships and fleets out to different areas to colonize different areas. It wasn't just Sumer. It wasn't just the Tigris-Euphrates basin that they colonized, because they landed in the Yangtze River, too, of ancient China. They also landed in the Harappan Indus river basin and founded Mohenjo-Daro and Lakash and all those cities in Pakistan, India. They also landed in the Urubamba Valley Basin in South America, establishing Tiahuanaco, Pumapunka, Cuzco, Ollantaytambo, all that area back there, real close to Easter Island. They also landed in the Nile among the Melampides, and they founded the first Egypt. So these fleets were going everywhere. And the lead navigator, Enki, was later remembered as Enoch, but it was over 15 centuries later when the Jews were in Babylonian libraries recording all these events and messing everything up. They were messing everything up too. The Enki of the Sumerian Akkadian text later became Enoch or Hanok in the Hebrew writings. But in Babylon, he was Ea, also called Oannes, later called Dagon. This is Vulcan. It's different cultures called him different things, but the chronology is all absolutely perfect. The chronological, the numbers attached to each tradition. So we have the collapse of the vapor canopy created at the beginning of the Edenic period. Now here is the end of Eden. Eden was a period of time after Eden was created. Paradise was created after the world was totally destroyed, after an advanced civilization that had produced Cro-Magnon, who were sedentary, Cro-Magnon, who were shooting Neanderthal with bullets, as we've shown in Archaics. Neanderthal skulls had bullets. Ancient bison, aurochs, they had bullets. These aren't slings. These were high velocity rounds that have been found in these animal skeletons and in Neanderthal skulls. This was Cro-Magnon. Their world was destroyed, infrastructure lost. It was some type of pole shift. They literally lost everything. And then they were hunted and eaten by Neanderthal that were still here. And then this vapor canopy came, and chicken eggs turned into velociraptors. turtles turned into stegosaur, and all kinds of things that we have seen that we have been told, gaslit, are dinosaurs that lived 65 million years ago. But that's not what the historical record shows us. It shows us a cycle of vapor canopies where these creatures appear rapidly from the eggs of pre-existing avians, reptiles, amphibians, and fish and insects. This world returns quick. Can you imagine the veritable jungle and giant life forms that would have been all over the world in a 450-year-old Edenic vapor canopy? Yeah, it boggles the mind. Now you know. Now you can understand better why Derinkuyu and 58 other underground cities have been found all underneath Turkey. Why underground shelters have been found all over the world from ancient times. It wasn't safe for humans, especially humans bereft of their infrastructure. Those periods of time, nature ruled. Nature ruled everything under the moon, and the sun was unseen. So, I mean, this leads to things like the Voynich manuscript. Once you understand that this is a natural cycle of our world, you'll understand things like the Voynich manuscript isn't even a mystery anymore. It's just a book that was written and illustrated during a vapor canopy period. Again, movies often give us glimpses, but I've told you guys in the past, the location of megalithic cities using blocks that were far too large to defend against humans have been found all over the world. We have 1,000 different content creators now that are all experts on ancient masonry, cyclopean masonry. They know the difference between technolithic, post-technolithic, Heliolithic, all these are types of megalithic architecture. They know the cromlechs and the dolmens and the table stones. They got it all figured out. I don't know how they got it all figured out, but they do. So we have these locations, as I've shown, all over the world in areas where you don't even need to make fortifications that big at all, unless you're protecting your kids and your wives, your young ones, your elderly, from things that just aren't quite human. Much of the ancient megalithic gigantic architecture from the old world does not make sense outside the context that there were things in the world that if you went too far below the timberline, it was very dangerous down there. So they built their constructions high up in the mountains, inaccessible passes way up there. Why? Because there's no jungle up there. There's no reason for large reptiles, large amphibians, large insects, and large avians, because avians are lethal, especially wingless birds that are 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 feet high. If they're hungry, yeah, man, it's hard to defend yourself against them. I mean, some of you ladies are going to run from a chicken. Some of you guys are going to run from a rooster. Can you imagine one that's 12 foot tall? That bird is vicious. The talons, the beak, that bird is vicious. It's a man-eater. So, yeah, you already know. After a century of chicken nuggets, them chickens are going to want payback. Yeah, oh yeah. So, this is a vapor canopy world. And this is how the biblical version starts with: the evening and the morning was the next day. Because the night was super bright with a magnified moon through a mesosphere that acted like a telescope. But during the day, the heat of the sun would cloud up the canopy, and it would be a dark purple light period. So the ancients learned that the night was first. And then all of a sudden the world changed. Eden was gone. Eden collapsed. All that water in the sky fell. And when it did, the ice caps appeared almost instantly. That's where they come from. This is why the whole Ice Age theory and glaciation is so stupid. It's so dumb. This is why there's 40, 48, 49 different theories as to how an ice age is even possible. There's even more theories as to how we have glaciers that go in different directions. We have seen the movement of glaciers. They go in totally different directions. They don't go where you think they would go. But all the ice is along the perimeter. That's where it's stacked up the most. Antarctica is where most of the ice is. Greenland gets covered, North Pole gets covered, but it's all coming from the sky. And then it goes back into the sky because of volcanism. What is Vulcan? Typhon. What is Typhon? Phoenix. We've already been through all this, but I'm just reminding you, we're in a pre-flood world. We're in one of the greatest events ever in recorded human history, 3439 BC, the appearance of the Anuna, technologically advanced humans that come share their wealth of tools, weapons, and knowledge with primitive Neolithic surface dwellers. They were not from the surface. If they were, it was from a surface of a world long before. But these guys had been living underground for a while. And they come up and they got beards and they've got godlike powers and they've got tablets. I don't have my tablet with me, but they got tablets. And with these tablets, they're called Mies in Sumerian. They do amazing things with these tablets, and people watch. Like, wow, he moved that big metal dragon, the big metal earth-eating dragon, man, just moved when he did that with that Mii. And he gets on his Mii and he's talking to this other guy way over there. They're miles apart. We have to yell at each other, but they just talk to each other on the Mies. And the more primitive people realize, damn, these are godlike powers. They're controlling things in the sky with maybe drones with their Mies. All these descriptions of Sumerian records is cargo cult. They weren't written in real time. They are all post-reset compositions. When you understand that almost all the writings of the ancient world describing the time periods back then are all post-reset compositions, everything begins to make sense because you look through things through the cargo cult lens. When you look through things, cargo cult, for those of you who don't know, cargo cult term came after World War II when it was noticed that World War II American GIs in World War II were taking over Pacific Islands in the war against Japan. So often they would island hop, and they would know once they had taken more and more islands, they don't need islands further back. So they would leave them lightly garrisoned, and they would go to the next island in World War II and heavily fortify it. But what they noticed that Pacific Islanders that lived on those islands, once they left, the Pacific Islanders would build their own runway. They would build a tower that looked like the towers that they had, little conning towers or whatever. And they would have a guy out there with bamboo who put the bamboo on fire on the end to match the glowing aviation batons that the guys on the airfield do. So it's cargo cult, a primitive Neolithic society, is mimicking the activities of a more advanced society and expecting the same results. What are those results? If I get out there on my runway and I get my batons and I do my little cheerleader activity and I got them all well lit up and I chant the things I think he's chanting, and you guys can lend me some energy over there. I need you to do the boogie. I need you three right there to do the boogie and the shimmy, and then I'll do this, and maybe one of the badass crates will fall at the sky with that mushroom, that big old mushroom that brings that crate down. And then when the mushroom lands that crate, we can open up that crate and we'll have those smoke sticks that those guys were giving us. And maybe we'll get some new t-shirts and stuff. And maybe some of those magazines that show those goddesses in them that ain't got no clothes on. Yeah, man, that's cargo cult phenomenon. This is what was noticed. And it was studied by anthropologists. Anthropologists flooded the islands after that, and National Geographic was full of reports about cargo cult phenomenon. This is what happened. Cargo cult phenomenon is the history of the human race because we have been reset multiple times, and there is always more advanced sectors that disappear. And the disappearing is phenomenal because we have direct evidence from this time period before the great flood of Typhon. You know of it as the flood of Noah. It didn't flood the whole world. There was flooding all over the world, but the whole world didn't flood. And there were several species. There were several races that all survived. Yeah, it's the Judeo-Christian version of the Great Flood is like a DC Comics version of history. There has never been time the entire world flooded. So, but the cargo cult phenomenon is real. It's always been real. It is always the perfect explanation for everything that we have been through. But we have direct evidence that the people in ancient times did the exact same thing that we're being gaslit today. We're being gaslit today that a threat is coming from the sky. We're being gaslit today that the only way to really escape The escape, the danger of something that may happen to our world is if we can get up to the sky and maybe go colonize the moon or colonize Mars. But it's all bullshit. It's all smoke and mirrors, and none of it's true. None of it's true. The ancients, the ancients sold a hog to the very people that they couldn't take with them. They didn't have the resources to take everybody. So they told them they ascended into the stars to make their escape. But it was all misdirection, just like the ancient aliens and UFO and UAP phenomenon today. I'm not saying the phenomenon doesn't exist, but I've already shown you there are alternate explanations for everything. They gaslit these technologically advanced people, our ancestors, gaslit the shit out of the people who were going to remain on the surface and had them believing that they were going to go ascend into the sky. And probably had the technology back then to even make it look like they went into the sky because the ancients believed it. And I'm going to show you I'm going to explain what this evidence is when we get to that part here in a minute. But they bought it hook, line, and sinker because they spent a prodigious amount of man hours constructing things in recognition that their benefactors had escaped into the sky. When they actually went into the underworld facilities like Derinkuyu and Phoenix Hill in China and different areas that have been found around the world that can sustain a large population for a couple decades. They hid from what was coming in the sky. Now, that's 3439 BC. A 450-year-old vapor canopy collapsed, and it's what killed 1/3 of the human race. Enki, Oannes, Vulcan, Enoch appears. The Anuna exchange their knowledges, tools, weapons, how to make them, how to make weapons, how to make tools, how to make cosmetics, how to do herbalism, how to garden, plant, agriculture, canals, architecture, masonry, astronomy, everything was taught. This is what's in the book of Enoch. Everything was taught. It's also in the book of Jasher, but everything was taught. And in exchange, these Anuna were given wives. Any woman that they were so highly praised, they could choose any woman, any female they wanted. And they did. And the story is preserved in a most abbreviated way, which has caused so much confusion and so much Judeo-Christian gaslighting. When it's very simple. And the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they chose and they chose whichever. And there were giants in the earth in those days. And after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, this is the passage in Genesis 6:4. And in the Judeo-Christian interpretation, they have mixed two different things. One is a descriptor of what was going on. The other is a description of when that was going on. They are not together. The sons of God coming in unto the daughters of men was a major event in human history. It was the merging of a technologically advanced culture and a primitive culture on the surface. And to the primitive culture on the surface, it was a major event that their daughters were taken by these gods, godlike heroes, and that their race, the Sumerians, were actually the they were the benefactors of this great gift of the divine seed. That's how they looked at it. The divine seed being planted into their daughters. It is the celebration of two different cultures. One of them thankful that the other culture is bringing so much knowledge and bringing so much to the table. It may even be the origin of the whole concept of dowry. It may be. But in Genesis, that's just explaining the major event. That there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, is just a description of when this event occurred. Why were there giants in those days? Because the vapor canopy just collapsed. When the vapor canopy collapsed, what have I told you in the past in many different presentations? There is nothing in the Greek And in the Phoenician, that even hints that giants came about from angels having sex with human women. This is the Judeo-Christian bullshit. Giants come from environmental changes. The humans that were existing during this 450-year Edenic period were gigantic, but they didn't know they were big because the mammoths were big, the bears and the tree sloths and the turtles and the salamanders and the komodos, the ostriches, the sparrows, the insects. I've showed you on my channel. They're all big. And when humans were here, I've given you all the evidence you could ever need on my channel. Showed you all the discoveries. We were all here at the same time. Humans were here. Technologically advanced vehicles were here all at the same time. And what we're told is dinosaurs, large reptiles, is parthenogenetic genetic species is all it is. We're told they're dinosaurs and they lived 65 million years ago. It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. They're all here recently. That's why we keep finding them on the surface. But we find human architecture and human skeletons and human artifacts at extreme depths in the earth, especially in coal veins. Yeah, all the dinosaurs are on the surface. So stupid. But this is how we've been educated, and we fell for it. But this is the vapor canopy world. They're only temporary, but 450-year-old vapor canopy is a long time to have a jungle that has no winters. Remember, during vapor canopies, there are no seasons. No seasons during vapor canopies. The world is fundamentally different. So we have this period of time. The sons of God come into the daughters of men, and there's a race of heroes born. Of course there are. From the perspective of a Neolithic culture, the children of their daughters giving birth to sons and daughters who are of the seed of the Anuna, to them, it was, their sons and daughters became like heroes because they weren't like them, but they were them. They were of their blood mixed with the blood of the Anuna. It was a huge deal. And the ancient writer was conveying the time period. It was at this time that this merging of cultures happened between the flood. This is the merging of cultures that gave rise to a new race. That new race was called Noahic. It was Noah and his offspring are the descendants of the merging of the Anuna, who came from the underworld after a cataclysm, and through intermarriage with Neolithic very short stature people of all the river valleys. They're all the same. The people of the Baba are almost identical to the people of the Melampides of the Nile River. The same exact olive skin, dark eyes, and straight black hair of South America mirrors the Indus Valley civilization of Pakistan and India. It mirrors the Egyptian Nile civilization, the Melampides. It mirrors the Tigris-Euphrates original civilization called the Sumerians. They prided themselves as the black-headed people, and it totally mirrors the ancient Chinese. It's the same thing. This is a huge deal where all these fleets of ships land after this cataclysm and they intermarry with all the locals. It was huge for the locals. And it ended up being recorded in their legends and their traditions as a really big event. But the writer of Genesis wanted you to know when that happened. It was when giants were still in the world. That means it's right after a vapor canopy. Humans during a vapor canopy don't even know they're large because everything else is large. The trees are large. So the vapor canopy collapses, and these giants don't move around as good anymore. They were normal-sized humans. But now that the vapor canopy is gone and the sun is out, and now we're under low pressure, ambient radiation is gone, the oxygen, nitrogen density in the air is absolutely gone. It's a totally different world. Giants are moving around. They're still having babies. They're just not. They're sluggish, not thinking clear. It's a different world. Skulls don't grow under high pressure, under low pressure like they did under the vapor canopy. Human skulls aren't growing long and all that, and the human body is now afflicted by things. Things hurt it, and now it can't heal rapidly anymore. It's a totally different environment. Giants don't last very long, but the giants still gave birth to children. But those children were born into the Ice Age world. In the Ice Age world, they performed just great, but guess what? They were very short compared to their parents. They were short. But their sons and daughters, the sons and daughters of those born during a vapor canopy, became the giants. Why? Because they were the titans. In the ancient world, the titans were the one from the world before. When the titans had offspring, they were only gigantic. They weren't titans. When two titans got together, they produced a giant. The giants are the first generation born after the collapse of a vapor canopy. They're not in the canopy. So they're much smaller than their parents, who are now regarded as titans. Why are they regarded as titans? Because the giants themselves didn't feel they were big at all. Their parents are big as hell, but they're not. When did the giants become the giants? When they started having children. Because now the grandchildren, the sons and daughters born to the first generation born to after the collapse of the vapor canopy, are even smaller. And those are regular sized humans. That's us. That's us. And we looked back on our moms and dads within a century. Within a century, we're looking back on our moms and dads. That whole generation's huge. But there's still some big, massive dudes out there, and women. And later generations started regarding some of those women as goddesses because they didn't age. They were born in a vapor canopy world. And it seemed like they perpetually stayed 25 years old. They just didn't age. It's a beautiful thing. So the titans, after the collapse of the vapor canopy in the pre-flood world, are literally outliving their giant offspring. And normal-sized humans are seeing, damn, the titans are badass because they're bigger than their moms and dads, who are giants compared to them. But the titans outlive them. Giants are dying out, naturally, just growing old and dying out. And the grandchildren are living even shorter lives. And humans born in the third generation after the collapse of the vapor canopy begin to grow old and die, and the titans still aren't aging. This is the world of Greek mythology, and it perfectly matches up with what we've discovered about vapor canopies and what they do. How that world is totally different. It's not the Jewish version that was written in Babylon when they didn't understand what they were reading and they had to fill the gaps. And they invented winged men that came down from the sky and had sex with human women, and those women popped out giants. That's not what the historical record says. There are no traditions in the world that conform to the Jewish gaslighting. It's bullshit. It's all bullshit. Titans and giants are natural. And it's not just back then, because as I've shown here in Archaics, and many other YouTubers and many published books about giants have shown, giants have come back at least 2 more times since then. So have large reptiles and amphibians and giant insects and jungles. Yeah, all that. We've been through this cycle multiple times. Multiple times. So we move on. And I've already been talking an hour, and we've only covered 2 of about 20 things I need to cover. Shit. That's got to be third space. Thank you, bro. Yeah, man. All right. Let's see. So we move on. Civilization thrives. After the Anuna appear with their patriarch, Vulcan, Enoch, Enki, Oannes, it's all the same person. Also Etana, it's the exact same identity as I've shown you guys. So civilization thrives for 326 years, till the year 3113 BC. We really don't know. Researchers, there's different researchers who theorize it, but there had to be some type of epic event. And everybody agrees it's some type of disaster, excuse me, that started the Mayan long count, 3113 BC. 326 years after civilization begins with the collapse of the vapor canopy is the Mayan long count. But at this exact same time, other calendars appeared. What was going on? What happened at this event? 320 years or so after the appearance of Enki and the Anuna and civilization beginning, an amalgamation of two cultures, which was a huge deal in the ancient world because there were two different races that came together and their offspring created a whole new race that later became known as the Noahic race, the race that actually survived the flood. So here is the Mayan Itza Temple of the Cross calendar. It's a separate calendar from the Mayan long count calendar, but it begins at this time. So does the Vedic Kali Yuga calendar, 3103 BC, the Olmec calendar, 3373 BC, the 1560 years of Etana at this period. If you look in a biblical chronology, you will find out this is exactly during the reign of the 365 years of Enoch. What was Enoch? He was an architect, he was a chronologist, he was a mathematician, he was a prophet, he was a son of the Most High God. Whatever happened at this period, all these cultures decide. Oh, this is also the exact same time period of Scorpion King. What happened at this period that they had to all of a sudden diligently start recording time? Because prior to this, there's no evidence of any calendars. What happened at this event? Because if we go by the traditions attached to the Mayan long count, then the Mayan long count's 1,872,000 turnings of the stars divided by 13 Mayan Bactans is a countdown to when the world will be destroyed again and time will collapse. So all these calendars begin at the same time. And the traditions attached to the Mayan long count is that this is a countdown to when time itself will collapse. Well, what does that mean? It means there's going to be a change in the diurnal movement from day and night and the annual movement of 365 days a year. Something's going to be fundamentally altered. That's how time collapses. But you guys are Archaics veterans, you already know. You already know. It's even explained in the book of Revelation what's going to happen to the length of the day and the length of the year. That's the collapse of time. We know the exact year this is going to happen. It's so easy to figure out. But I digress. So 204, you got Archaics veterans know that number. 204 years after the 204th year of the Mayan long count calendar. It's the year 2909 BC. It is the beginning of the 670 years of the eight Anunnaki kings who rule over the Sumerian Pentapolis, the five pre-flood cities. This 670 years, and I just did a video on the Sumerian king list. For those of you who don't know, 670 years is the duration of the 8 kings before the flood. We know this because it was written in a day count system. The Sumerian king list says 8 kings ruled 241,200 units of time. We know that unit of time is a shar, a turning of the stars, not a year, not the Billy Carson version, Zechariah Sitchin bullshit. No 8 men ruled to a quarter of a million years. It's just dumb. It's dumb. It's a day count system. 241,200 turnings of the stars is precisely 670 years. And this is why Nostradamus had written that many will die before the phoenix dies. Until 670 his dwelling shall endure. What is the dwelling of Phoenix? It's the sky. What happened in the 670th year from 2909 BC, which was the 204th year of the Mayan long count? Well, I'm going to tell you. 3113 BC minus 204 years gives us 2909 BC, which is exactly 670 years, to 2239 BC, which is the Typhon flood when Phoenix wiped out the world. And you've seen in my research, man, where many scientists all over the world came together and published their research showing they don't know why, But every civilization in the world collapsed, and the world was depopulated around 2300 BC. You can't make this shit up. The calendrics matches the science perfectly. But as long as you're looking at the Younger Dryas period, you'll miss all this. You'll miss every bit of this information I'm giving you now if you listen to Graham Hancock and everybody who copies him. Because none of these men ever talk about any of these things. And we're talking about worldwide resets that are recorded in the human historical record. Yeah, man. It's crazy. The whole thing's just such a mind fuck. The amount of censorship on this information. It blows my mind. Archaics veterans, why 204 years? Why is it 204 years? From 3113 BC, the beginning of the Mayan long count, to 2909 BC, which begins the 670-year countdown till the flood. 670 years being the reign of the 8 kings. Those 8 kings, 8 men can rule 670 years, especially in a pre-flood period. But why is it 204 years? 204 is 2448 months. 204 years is 2448 months. That number always has a dual meaning. Everywhere we find that number, 2 things happen. Exodus of those who are prepared, and cataclysm for those who are not. That's what that number means. It appears everywhere in human history when there's vast cataclysms and mass disappearances of human populations. All right. So we move on. See, Jonathan Sherman was on it. He said Exodus. Oh, Pillar of Pip said it too. That's right. OG Face Diaper, 204 courses of the Great Pyramid with the chief cornerstone in place. All right, guys. So interestingly, we mentioned the Great Pyramid now because the 290th year of the Mayan long count calendar, the 298th year is when the Great Pyramid was finished in 2815 BC. So remember, the Great Pyramid took 90 years to construct. 90 years is 1080 months. 2815 BC is when the 1080 months was over, the 90 years. But 2815 BC is the 1080th year of the pre-flood world. The Great Pyramid's own geometry also is self-referencing, because as a 5-point geometrical figure, in 2 dimensions, it forms an arab. A Sumerian arab is a pentagram. The pentagram, everybody says it's evil, but it's not. The pentagram is 5 equidistant points. Those 5 equidistant points are only in 2 dimensions. And in 2 dimensions, it's referred to as the portal. In esoteric, occult, mystical, even in satanic literature, the pentagram is understood as a portal symbol. Now, when you take those 5 points of 2 dimensions and you render it into a 3-dimensional form, you have 4 at the base and 1 at the top. Those same 5 points now form a prism, a pyramid. But in 2 dimensions, those 5 points, if you draw a line to the points to do the pentagram, as you will read in the research of Busenbark, the pentagram itself is made up of 10 angles of 108 degrees. Well, 10 times 108 is 1080. I told you the geometry of the Great Pyramid is self-referencing with the actual year on the Annus Mundi timeline that it was finished, and also the month that it was finished, 1080 months. This is why I have a whole video on YouTube that shows you all the associations to the number 1080 to the Great Pyramid from all the traditions around the world. Many fragments from the ancient world identify this holy mountain in the pre-flood period with the number 1080. So this Great Pyramid was finished in the 298th year of the Mayan long count, which was the 624th year since the sun had reappeared when the canopy collapsed in 3439 BC. This means that the Great Pyramid complex, Giza complex in Egypt, was constructed during a period just like our own. not a vapor canopy period. It was not built during a vapor canopy. We have theorized that. We have theorized about it in the past, but we have to abandon that now. The vapor canopy collapsed at the Gihon flood in 3439 BC when Enki appeared. Then the sun appeared, and now the sun is in the sky and the stars are easily visible when the Great Pyramid Complex was built. No vapor canopy at all during this period. 624th year. So 460 years later is the year 2653 BC. We're still in the pre-flood world. 460 years later is 2653 BC. This is 426. This is 460 years out of the Mayan long count calendar. It's the year 2653. We've already discussed this priorly on Archaics as well. This was an epic disaster for which we don't have a whole lot of information. Zechariah Sitchin did provide us some, but this was a unique cataclysm because this cataclysm was Phoenix, and 6 years later, it was Nemesis X. When does that pattern happen again? Because this is the only time in the world it happened before in history. And this is what's very significant. Phoenix appears in 2653 BC on its 138-year periodicity, followed 6 years later on the 792-year timeline, Nemesis X appears. They bring a vapor canopy. This is the vapor canopy that lasts for 414 years, a cursed earth period. This is the vapor canopy that explains why Genesis says giants appeared twice before the flood. Oh, we've covered that in Archaics too. Yeah, that little passage in Genesis, it says the giants appeared and also after that. So we have two appearances of giants before the flood and two different vapor canopies that explain how that happened. No angels required, no wings, no batteries, nothing. Just an environment that was conducive for giantism. So Phoenix appears in 2653 BC, brings a vapor canopy, followed 6 years later by Nemesis X. What does Nemesis X do once a vapor canopy is in place? The parthenogenetic changes in egg-laying species, because Phoenix doesn't do it all the time. Phoenix rarely does it. But when Nemesis X appears with Phoenix, what happens? What happens? Come on, can I get it in the chat? It's a very unique thing. Phoenix brings its own phenomena. But when Nemesis X is added to the Phoenix phenomena, what the hell happens to our world? Pillar of Pip, 522 AD happens. We'll get to that too. We're going to get to that in a minute. You're on top of it, man. Yeah, the Phoenix phenomenon brings red rain, red mud, red dirt, massive amount of soil materials that rain from the sky, carbonaceous material that rains from the sky. When a Phoenix phenomenon first starts, a red star appears in the sky and it gets brighter and brighter and brighter. And then all the variable stars, which are red stars, start going crazy. They're like little projectors that are creating phenomena in our sky that creates fallout that falls down to our world. Phoenix phenomenon is very unusual. But as this is going on, earthquakes and volcanoes are erupting, and the volcanoes are adding moisture to the mesosphere. If you think a volcano is just spitting gray and black smoke, you're mistaken. There is a massive amount of water inside all that, the volcano, the plume, what's called smoke. It's a massive amount of water. When submarine volcanoes that are under ice pack are erupting all together, that's how the mesosphere is refilled with moisture. As the mesosphere refills with moisture, our world almost instantly becomes not colder as the sun starts going out, but warmer as a greenhouse starts taking effect. So Yeah, the beginning. It may be cool for a little while as a vapor canopy is building, but it gets warm and hot real fast as pressure increases. So this is what happened. This is 414 years before the great flood of Noah. We're still in the pre-flood world when when the shock and awe period, not the, excuse me, the shock and abandonment period begins. If any of you have read my Chronicon, the pre-flood world is divided into periods. This begins the shock and abandonment period because the surface dwellers no longer have leadership. All the Anuna have vanished. The surface dwellers are left with a story that all their benefactors escaped into the sky. And that's what they believed because back then we had Vimanas. And they did. All the rich, all the billionaires, all the elite, all the corporations that existed before the flood. I know some of you are like, what the fuck is Jason talking about? But you have no idea, man. All the things that we have found in the archaeological record, we were technologically advanced at this period of time. You cannot build the Giza complex. Is all the stuff that's discovered in Egypt can never be built without machines. We had an advanced infrastructure. We had power tools. We had all this in the pre-flood world. Everybody, all the rich, the elite, all the billionaires, all the people highest in government and military, everybody who was able got on their Vimanas and they were seen by everybody else as taking up into the sky and taking off and leaving. Where did they go? They went to different mountain strongholds where they bed down. They hid in the underworld. Phoenix brought all this red earth, red rain, red mud, all this fallout, earthquakes, volcanoes. All of a sudden, a vapor canopy comes back, but they don't really last long unless they get an extra impetus. And it got it because Nemesis X came next. Nemesis X is always here for 60 years. Every single time. I've got so many videos documenting each 60-year period. You guys know. 60 years of full tertiary field immersion. What happens? Parthenogenetic changes to every single pod, larva, egg-laying creature in our world. Chickens do not do anything but be chickens. But when they lay eggs, something else is hatched. When turtles lay eggs, something else is hatched. Amphibians lay eggs, something else is hatched. You think dinosaurs are gone, but they've been here all along. They're in rendered life forms today that are designed for the ice age environment we're in right now. We have 14 more years, or 13 more, 2039. We have 13 more years before this ice age ends and the next vapor canopy cycle begins. We have 13 more years, guys, before our dozen eggs ends up being 12 velociraptors. Yeah. Now you understand. If you can just process the world suddenly full, this isn't gradual. We're talking about, think about how many chickens, all birds, not just chickens, all birds. Think about how many birds are laying eggs every day. Every day, there's 365 days in a year. Every day. All the salamanders, all the amphibians, all the reptiles, all the fish, all the insects in just one day. And they're not anything like the life forms that laid the eggs. These parthenogenetic changes are going to shock people. Within weeks, the world is going to be filled with life forms for which everybody's going to think it's an alien invasion. They're going to think, what the hell is going on? But at the same time, plant life is going to be taking on fundamental changes. Everything under a vapor canopy is altered and changed because of pressure, because of temperature, because of light, because of humidity. Everything is changed, and it's changed rapidly. We know, we've seen this in the Voynich manuscript. Somebody was so shocked by the changes, they documented it for us. Did a whole book. I'm going to end up doing a video on it. But Nemesis X follows Phoenix fast. right here in the pre-flood world. You guys have seen the 138 years goes all the way back 7,000 years. You've also seen the 792-year Nemesis timeline, unbroken, everything. I can't make anything up. I've already published it. I've already showed you exactly how they work, where they are in history, and what in the historical record, what text, what traditions, what citations we have for each one. You can't make it up. This is the exact years that these things occur. So Nemesis X brings a tertiary field right after the Phoenix field, right after Phoenix appears. Phoenix lays all the red rain, red earth, red mud. It basically brings the vapor canopy. It gets the world prepared, and Nemesis X brings the life forms. This is a cycle, and we've been through it multiple times. Multiple times. It's the shock and abandonment period as well. And what is the first thing the survivors do who are now living in a vapor canopy world? They're like, what the hell? All of our leaders, everybody, they left us, abandoned us, left us. Well, some of them, a whole bunch of them survived. A lot of them don't make it because they didn't have long-term planning. They didn't know what to expect. They didn't know what to expect. No need to get graphic. But some cultures thrived. And we know this because the Akambaro figurines of 38,000 figurines. I've already showed them. I'm not going to go into detail. If you want to know, you need to see the videos that show absolute direct evidence that humans and prehistoric creatures like Stegosaurus, we had domesticated even duck-billed dinosaurs. What they're called. I hate the word dinosaur because people automatically jump to 65 million years ago. No, that's gaslighting. That's the uniformitarian model. Science is lying to you. These creatures were not that old. We find them, they're full of DNA. So some of them still got barely decomposed skin and scales. Yeah, man, we're being gaslit. These creatures come back over and over through parthenogenetic changes induced by environments caused by Nemesis X. Now, and this is what the Colburn Bible is explaining as well. The emergence of reptiles during cataclysms, during Exodus events. It's crazy. So the Akambaro figurines, 35,000 to 38,000 figurines that were studied by Professor Charles Hapgood after they were discovered. He wanted to make sure and verify they were legit, and they were. They went out and found some more where the locals said they were. And yeah, they show anatomically correct what we call dinosaurs. And it's astonishing. Brontosaurus, Tyrannosaurus Rex, pterodons, pterodactyls, triceratops, duck-billed dinosaurs, the lizard with the great spiked dorsal fin. Yeah, it's like 7 or 8 different types of dinosaurs. And I'll be damned, man. They're all in those figurines. They're not faked. They're not mimicked. We didn't even know. But even the age of the Akambaro, even if they were faked, they would have been faked before the period that the word dinosaur was even brought to the public's attention in 1841. They're not fake. Just like the Ica stones are not fake. 40,000 stones showing anatomically correct dinosaurs and humans interacting with them. So here we have, and that's what they're dated. They're dated to the Dark Ages. These though, this period here, the shock and abandonment period, the Akambaro and the Ubaid collections of reptilians and all that, these are dated to this period by archaeologists. And they're absolutely correct. The figurines are this period. This is when humans were now descending into Derinkuyu and the 58 other underground cities of Cappadocia, Phrygia, Hittite Anatolia. Most people don't know there's 59 underground cities there. Huge population of people could have stayed. China had them too, and so did South America, and they've probably been a lot of other places that just haven't been found. So the shock and abandonment period is when people on the surface began domesticating the creatures that were appearing. Their chickens were laying down velociraptors, but the velociraptors would come up as little cute little lizards when they first hatch, and they were domesticated. We have figurines of humans riding giant lizards. And archaeologists have dated these 4,000 years ago. So, as humans are in the advanced holdouts of the underworld, those on the surface, some were eaten, died off, others thrived. They learned to live with them. Others didn't want to live with them. So what did they do? They built facilities like Catalhoyuk. Why Catalhoyuk? Why did Jason pull Catalhoyuk out? What's so unique about all the Huyuk sites? Well, because in Turkey, on the surface were the Huyuk sites and the Tepe sites, but on the underworld are all underground facilities. The Huyuk sites are really interesting because people lived on their ceilings, people lived on their rooftops, people's domiciles were the walls of the community. And if you wanted to get from one building to another, they had ladders and ramps. Nobody wanted to be on the ground. Catalhoyuk and the other Huyuk sites are built very strange, really strange, but also gigantic megalithic architecture was never put in places that made sense. They're always found way at the top of hills, way in inaccessible places, in the strangest areas. But it does make sense if you don't want to be a meal for a velociraptor. It does make sense if you don't want your kids carried away by pterodactyls and pterodons. You live in the alpine regions and you have these giant megalithic rocks and all that, which are way too big to defend against other humans, but you need them because these animals are getting effing big. Now, it's the shock and abandonment period. So what did people do? They thought that their benefactors, their rulers, the rich, the famous, the billionaires, the actors, the actresses, they all abandoned them. And they were left with a story that everybody flew off, man, met somewhere and went up into space. They went to the stars. They left. They became, maybe this is where the mystics got ascended masters from or whatever. Whatever, the people of the earth were gaslit. The elite were hiding in the underground, but they made them believe they're in the sky. And what happened after that? For centuries, people were etching into the side of chalk mountains the CERN giant. Big old giant effigies and pictures that were supposed to be votive offerings to the sky gods to come back down. Because no relief came after one generation, 2 generations, 3 generations. So by the time the 3rd and the 4th generation, they were still building these gigantic spiders and dragonflies and monkeys and insects and these offerings to the gods. Hey man, look, everything's alive down here. We still have all these things. It's okay. You can come back. You can come back. And the only way we could communicate with them is by building these giant effigies that face the sky, because you can't see what they are from the ground. There's no sense in these, and they were all built around the same time. Huge one in Australia, the Nazca lines all throughout. Huge geometrical messages. We were telling the gods, it's okay, you can come back. We didn't get wiped out. We're still here. This was the shock and abandonment period. And it's when the people realized that nobody was coming back. This is before the Great Flood. This is still during the pre-flood world. This is during the 414 years of the pre-flood world, when the people who survived the 2653 Phoenix event and 6 years later, the return of Nemesis X, who are now living among these prehistoric creatures and giant spiders and who are now living in this world under a vapor canopy, these people realized, man, the gods aren't coming back. It was during this 414-year period that ended in the great flood of Noah. It was during this period that the religions of the world were created. Out of desperation, human souls sought to find answers in the sky. They couldn't figure out why the gods would abandon them to this fate. The religions of the world were all created right here in this period, in this 4th century period. And these sky effigies and these mounds of a serpent eating an egg and all these animals and all these things were sent as messages into the sky because they felt that the star patterns themselves held the key to understanding how they can communicate with their gods. You have to understand, this is 5 and 6 generations later. Originally, everybody knew it was just the rich, the actors and actresses, the billionaires, the philanthropists, the corporations, the government, the military. That's who it was. But not in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th generation. Now it's gods. Yeah, the gods abandon us. How how are we going to survive, man? When are the gods going to come back? So remember, the earliest architecture is absolutely devoid of writing, and it's absolutely devoid. And this is very advanced architecture. It's devoid of writing, and it's devoid of anything of cultural, religious context. No idols, no statuary, nothing, no designs, nothing to show any type of cultural aesthetics, nothing. But during this 400-year period, that shit was abandoned. And now people are their culture and different unique designs are coming to play, and different settlements are being built to protect against the environment, the vapor canopy environment. We are never going to understand Göbekli Tepe until the very excavators of Göbekli Tepe get their heads out their asses and quit following that uniformitarian bullshit and start understanding the difference between vapor canopy architecture and Ice Age architecture. We're in an Ice Age now, but the Tepe sites were probably all built during vapor canopy periods, like the Huyuk sites. So we're never going to get true answers about this. I've already told you guys for years now. For years, I've been showing you all the evidence that Göbekli Tepe is nowhere near as old as they're saying. Now they found writing. Now they found pictograms and pictographs on a small tablet at Göbekli Tepe and at Karen Tepe. And you know what? They're not going to change anything. They're still gaslighting you, telling you that it's Ice Age, post-Ice Age architecture. They're never going to bring it down because that writing is not supposed to be before 3500 BC. The 35th century BC, appearance of Enki, the Anuna, 1/3 of the world is destroyed. Nemesis X did it. Everything fits and everything makes sense, but I'm never going to be able to get these guys on board because they are uniformitarians to the core. They are absolutely brainwashed. They have bought into a model that they paid for. They paid for miseducation. That is exactly what's being turned out by the universities. You pay for them to lie to you about human history. Simple as that. It's all a lie. Every single dating model is gaslighting. It's a total lies. You can't verify anything. And I'm going to hear my rant. I'm going off on uniformitarians now. Every single relative and absolute dating model requires you to make 6 or 7 assumptions to even accept the output of the data. It's all gaslighting. It's all bullshit. This cycle answers almost every enigma and mystery of the ancient world. And we got the chronology. If you're listening to me in Archaics, listen, you're one of the minority in the entire world that has seen all the chronological facts that put this timeline together. It's perfect. It is so mathematically perfect. I can tell you exactly what's going to start happening in 2039, what will happen in 2040, and what will follow through in 2046. And I don't even have to tell you. All I got to do is tell you to look at a video from the 80s called Nemesis by Shriekback. I don't have to tell you nothing. Just watch the video because they're laying it all out. Anyway, let's move on. It was at this period. This is really interesting. It was at this period, guys. This is the 460th year. I think it's you know what? I'm not going to lie to you guys. Hold on. I'm going to look this up. 460. Because this is important. Yeah. This is the 460th year of the Mayan long count. The Mayan long count seems to be when all of a sudden humans were feverishly creating calendars. And they were day count calendars, which means that they were very specific, which also alludes to the fact that we had technology. We had technology that factored all these days. Remember, the Mayan long count is not simple. It's 1,872,000 days. And it's divided in units of 360. 360 times 400, a Mayan epic, is a Bactan, which is 144,000 days. In the Mayan long count, the tradition behind it is that it fuses the 13 heavens to the 13 hells, and the 13 Bactans will pass before time collapses. So it's perfect. But it would have required a computer to put all these calendars together, as we've discussed many times in the past. But what's really interesting is this is 460 years. 2653 BC, the return of the vapor canopy in the pre-flood world, is 460 years of the Mayan long count. And 460 years is exactly 5,520 months. What? 552 times 10 months. 552 is a phoenix cycle. It's divisible by 138. You can't make this shit up. Everything in calendrics is self-referencing. I've shown you hundreds of examples, so it shouldn't be a shock to you. But what's interesting is that the bristlecone pines, the coastal dawnwoods, and the redwoods, the three giant species that are in the Sierra Nevadas, Washington, Oregon, and California, those trees date to this period. What is this period? This is a vapor canopy period. Guys, we have forests still alive, gigantic, beautiful trees, the biggest, most ancient trees in the world. And what do botanists and paleobotanists tell us? They tell us they date to this period right here. You can't make this shit up. I didn't date those trees. I didn't date those forests, but they date to this period right here. Blows my mind. This is exactly, they are the last holdouts of antediluvian forests. The last holdouts. And the trees only grew big because all the reptiles grew big, the amphibians grew big, the insects were growing big. The mammals, the marsupials, everything, the megafauna returned during this 400-year period. 414-year period. All the animals. It's a cycle. It's not the uniformitarian model at all. Uniformitarian model does not make sense of all the punctuated disappearances in strata between species. But this cycle makes perfect sense. But you would never know it if you're following the Younger Dryas drivel of Graham Hancock, because he's always going to get you to look for a cataclysm in the Ice Age. So I don't know which Ice Age he's talking about, because there's 49 different Ice Age theories. It is still theoretical. But anyway, they're still trying to figure out how all that ice, 2 miles high, got in the north and south hemispheres. How did it even get there? Vapor canopy. When vapor canopies collapse, all that moisture collapses and becomes that ice pack. When vapor canopies come back, anybody who's ever studied anything about Antarctica knows that it is absolutely packed full of volcanoes. What's going to happen when all the volcanoes, Vulcan, Phoenix, erupt underneath the ice cap? There will be no more ice cap. Where's the ice cap go? Where can it go? It goes to the sky. What's in the sky? It's called a mesosphere. What does it do? It traps water droplets. Well, what happens then? The weight of the mesosphere with all the accumulated water increases pressure, traps more oxygen. Animals and plants grow huge. And the exchange in carbon dioxide, oxygen, hydrogen, it becomes a cycle. It mounts in pressure and it continually increases. More changes, parthenogenetic changes in reptiles, insects, fish, and amphibians. While marsupials and mammals just grow big. They don't change. They just grow big. Man, thank you, Hudson. So these giant forests. Now we have an explanation for all the giant forests. It's amazing. We have an explanation. It's the shock and abandonment period. We have an explanation for the origin of religions, the abandonment of the gods. Now we have an explanation for the sons of gods coming unto the daughters of men. We have an explanation for titans and the difference between titans and giants, and the difference between giants and ordinary size humans. Vapor canopy explanation. Now we have an explanation for the agroglyphs, the giant pictures all over the world that face the sky. Now we have an explanation for Derinkuyu and 39 underground cities in Turkey. Now we have an explanation for the Tepe sites and why they're fundamentally different in the Huyuk sites. Now we have an explanation Now we have an explanation for why modern cultures like the Jews regard the night before the day. Because it was. When these systems were implemented, it was during a vapor canopy world. Yeah, man. I don't think I've seen you before, but I appreciate it, JX Kitch. All right, moving on. So the next cataclysm, we haven't even had a chance to get technologically advanced again. We haven't had a chance. Because what happened? 414 years of vapor canopy world. Acambaro. Now we got this massive collection of statues from Mexico that shows humans interacting with prehistoric creatures, doing all kinds of things, riding triceratops. Yeah, man, doing surgery on these creatures, eating them, cooking them, having some of them for pets, domesticating them, going to war against them. We have figurines for all this. And most of them are anatomically correct, what we call dinosaurs. So 2239 BC comes. You guys all know the date. It is the Typhon flood. In the Bible, it's called the flood of Noah. In the Babylonian version, it's called the Atrahasis epic. It is the event of the Epic of Gilgamesh. This is the day, in ancient traditions, it's called the day the sky fell. This is the event that started Mul-Apen. This is what got Babylon to start watching the sky for patterns. Mul-Apen is the event that created the need for the omen texts. It also created the need for the Venus almanacs. All this began at the same time. 2239 BC, the phoenix, the Typhon, appeared in the sky like a red dragon, and it collapsed the vapor canopy. When the vapor canopy collapsed, there was flooding all over the world, just like when Enki appeared, just like when Oannes appeared, when Vulcan appeared. Every bit of it, it's a cycle. We've gone, this is the last year of the pre-flood world, the 1656 years of Genesis. It's right here. 2239 BC is the year 1656 Anno Mundi. Everything fits perfect. This is the flood of Noah, caused by the Typhon, otherwise known as the Phoenix. The day the sky fell, the Mul-Apen destruction. You've all seen Mul-Apen. It's a disc with advanced triangles, and it's showing Triangulum, a constellation in the sky in the circumpolar region where a vast destruction descended from the sky. It was the Phoenix. Phoenix always descends from the north, just like astronomer Hoffman saw it in the month of May of 1764. This is exactly what's described in Hittite text as the dragon coming out of the northern heavens and creating all kinds of destruction and ruining Venus and all. We've covered all this in the past. But in 2239 BC, Mul-Apen destruction is what started the lunar count calendars, separating the heavens into 12. The Sumerians did it first. They separated the heavens into 12 divisions because in the pre-flood world, they did not have that. The world was separated in the pre-flood period into 4 quarters. The four corners of heaven. The 4 corners were the 4 royal stars. One was Regulus, one was Fomalhaut. I can't even remember the other 2 right now, but some of y'all know all 4 of them. But there was 4 royal stars that made the foundation of heaven. What does that mean? That means heaven was a square. And the 4 royal stars were the 4 quadrants. And the square of heaven was underneath what? The only star in the sky that did not move, the pole star. What was the pole star? It was called Thuban. What was Thuban? Thuban was Alpha Draconis, the eye of the dragon. The pole star didn't move, but the 4 royal stars did. What do we have here? When heaven is a foundation, a square, but the top is an eye looking down on the entire creation, geometrically, the ancients regarded the celestial sphere as a pyramid. four corners, four royal stars looking up at the eye that was looking down, the eye of the dragon. Draconis is shaped like a phi symbol, 1.6118. Draconis tail of the dragon always covered a third of the stars in the circumpolar region. The dragon, the eye didn't move, but the dragon's tail moved in one turning of the dragon's tail. This is how they factored time in the pre-flood world. This is why in some ancient traditions it's counting dragons. If it was 78 dragons, it's really just 78 days. Remember, the day began at night. They started factoring time, and sky watching began the day. Counting dragons was just counting how many days passed. So this is the pre-flood world, the antediluvian world. This is how they did things. And Mul-Apen was, first of all, Apen comes from the phoenix. The Pin deity is what it was originally called, this great red thing that appeared in the sky and terrified the ancients. But now, after the cataclysm, it's called Mul-Apen. Mul-Apen is the origin of Babylonian astronomy. This event, 2239 BC, is what caused the Babylonians to fear the sky, and they decided, you know what, we're going to go ahead and start recording everything. And that's when they came up with the Venus almanacs, the Omen text, and started watching all this stuff. And this is where the lunar calendar came. It was 12 mansions. Every 4 years, they had to create a 13th mansion to catch the calendar up with the seasons. There was never a 13-house calendar anywhere in the ancient world. Not a lunar calendar. The 13th lunar house was intercalary. They brought it to the table only when they needed to correct the calendar. So we have Mul-Apen, which begins lunar reckoning. This is way before a solar zodiac ever, because Mul-Apen is way before a solar zodiac appeared anywhere in the historical record. No one had a solar zodiac. The moon is used to calculate the times. Way back in history back then, nobody trusted the sun. It always disappeared. So no one trusted the sun. Now, what do the ancient traditions say about this period? The ancient American traditions say that this began the sun calendars. What was the first sun epic to ancient American traditions? The water sun. Why was it called the water sun? Because the sun appeared out of the watery firmament. The same thing the Egyptians said. The sun appeared out of the nun, the watery abyss. It's never made sense. It's never made sense. Why would the bright, glowing, fiery orb be born out of the watery nun? It doesn't make sense, but it does. Because the vapor canopy collapsed. The Egyptians knew it. How do we know they knew it? Because they said that the son of Osiris was Horus, and he was the newborn god added to the pantheon. He represented the sun. But who killed his dad? His dad was Osiris. His dad was killed by Typhon. We all know Typhon is the phoenix. So, the ancient Egyptian pantheon of gods, at the end of the career of the gods, suddenly the sun appears. The sun is the last to be added to the Egyptian pantheon. It doesn't make sense, according to the uniformitarian interpretation of myths, legends, and anthropology. But it does make sense. The sun was the last to enter the Egyptian pantheon because it was the last to appear in the sky. The vapor canopy was the watery nun that the sun was born from. It all makes sense. It's not just the Egyptians. The ancient Mesoamerican culture says it was the water sun. That was the very first sun age. Followed by the jaguar sun, the age of giants, Ogaigian period. Yeah, followed by whatever other suns. I can't remember what the other suns were. But even more so, the Sumerians. How do you have the Sumerian triad which represents other things, stars and heavens and all and the earth and all that. How do you have a long pantheon of Sumerian gods and not one of them represents the sun until the very last deity to enter the Sumerian pantheon, Utu Shamash? Utu Shamash is the final god added to the Sumerian pantheon. Imagine that. Utu, brother of Shamash, the sun. The last one to enter is the sun. And he is considered a brother of the gods. They called him Utu. Like Noah. Utu Napishtim, brother of the serpent. It's crazy, guys. It's crazy. The facts are all laid out. Everything's perfect. It all fits together. So the flood of Noah was a Typhon Phoenix event, as we have already discussed. It's exactly 432,000 turnings of the stars, or 432,000 dragons, turnings of the dragons, since 3439 BC, when Enki appeared with the Anuna and started civilization over after Nemesis X killed 1/3 of the human race in flooding. Why was it flooding? Because that vapor canopy just collapsed. We now have a perfect understanding of the pre-flood world. It's perfect. The Adam and Eve destruction ended a very advanced civilization. Adam and Eve were the survivors, new heavens and new earth. So later on, it was composed as a creation text, but it's not. It's a systemic reset. Systemic reset. And it was a vapor canopy for 400 and something years until Nemesis X appeared and collapsed the canopy, killed 1/3 of the human race in flooding. It's called the Gihon flood. I didn't make that flood up. It's found in the Talmud. It's found in the book of Jasher. And those are the only two sources I know. No, it's found in the traditions of the Yazidis. I'm sorry. In the traditions of the Yazidis of Afghanistan. I forgot. Andrew Collins goes into detail about it. They specifically remember a flood before Noah's that was even more devastating. And those flood events were 432,000 turnings of the stars apart, which is exactly 1,200 years, which satisfies the Phoenician records of the period before the flood of Vulcan. Vulcan is the phoenix. So the phoenix age before the flood, according to the Phoenicians, was 12 centuries. And we know that 432,000 divided by 360 of the celestial sphere is exactly 12 centuries. It all makes perfect sense. So we're at 2239 BC now. The megafauna begin to die out. A whole bunch of them flash froze. All the megafauna that were found in Alaska, Canada, Russia, Siberia, all the giant woolly mammoths, giant woolly rhinos, the tree sloths, the the Miocene horses, and all these flash frozen happened at this event. It was this event in 2239 BC because as soon as the vapor canopy collapses, the northern and southern extremities flash freeze. Everything flash froze. Elephants with tulips still on their tongues, they flash froze. Then they were buried in ice pack. They flash froze and died standing up, eating tulips. This whole ice age scenario showing ice and caveman with spears, and it's all bullshit. Every bit of it's bullshit. People have studied the hairs and the skin of the frozen mammoths and found out that those are cooling systems. There's sweat glands in the skin, and that type of hair actually cooled them off and allowed them to retain moisture on their flanks so that breezes would pass through. The hair kept the moisture in, but it didn't keep the breeze out. And the breeze would come in and go into the hair, hit the moisture, and cool down these giant mammoths. Yeah, we've been lied to. These fuckers have been lying from the beginning. These creatures could never, the size of these creatures that have been found, and you know that over 2.5 million mammoths are still under the ice pack, and we don't know how many are still under Canada. The permafrost goes the entire, from Canada, from Alaska, all of Canada, all of Russia, all of Siberia, all the way back to Alaska again. Every bit of that permafrost is covering massive amounts of mammalian and marsupial life forms that were flash frozen in place from this event. The vapor canopy. But that's not what happens toward the equatorial. From the Tropic of Cancer, 30 degrees north latitude, 30 degrees south latitude, from the equatorial region that's temperate. Nothing freezes and it only rains. The vapor canopy condenses and falls as torrential rain. It may fall for 40 days and 40 nights. I don't know, but it falls and it collapses. The mesosphere today is still up there. It's just suspended water droplets, tiny water droplets. Yeah, I didn't make up mesosphere. So this is what happened. Everything froze. Those creatures, the size of those creatures, they couldn't exist today. They can't breathe enough oxygen today. They're massive. Those mastodons, those mammoths, those tree sloths, they're gigantic. They can't exist today. They can't exist today for two reasons. One, the amount of food that they would require to live means they could have never lived in a snowy, icy environment. It's bullshit. And two, they had to have lived in a vapor canopy world with increased oxygen because today they would suffocate being that size. It's not going to happen. So, yeah, we've been gaslit about the whole ice age is such bullshit. This stuff appears in cycles and it disappears just as fast, as proven by the Lost Squadron that was lost in 1942. 7 aircraft, all landed on ice pack hard. They didn't sink into the ice pack. It was hard. These heavy vehicles landed on that ice pack. Rubber tires are on the ice pack, and 50 years later, the U.S. military contracted a private company to go get those aircraft back. And they were 268 foot depth, all at the exact same depth. They didn't melt and fall in there, none of that. It proving that the uniformitarian model's bullshit. Proving that the maps that we have from the 1500s are accurate. That Greenland and Antarctica had no ice. So we have the mass megafauna die out. They're flash frozen. But along the equatorial ways, they die out anyway because they can't breathe. They can't get away from humans that are going to eat them. They die out. They're hunted to extinction. Now, the ones that don't die out, they're still here. They're just not under a vapor canopy. Once the vapor canopy returns, those African and Indian elephants and those rhinoceros, they're going to become something monstrous when the vapor canopy returns. But right now, they're in the Ice Age forms. This exact same life form, just a different environment. Now, we're done. I don't want to go through all this data on 2239 BC. It's already been 2 hours. Oh, I'm way behind. So after the Great Flood, all these civilizations, during 414 years of abandonment, now the gods are a concept. They're not. After this destruction here, within 25 years, building begins. Remember, I just recently did a video showing Sumerian civilization is badly misdated, and I proved it. I showed you exactly where Sumerian civilization began. It began with Kish. Sumerian Kinglish shows it began with Kish. Sumerian Kinglish, it literally tells us that the Kish dynasty was the first dynasty after the flood. This is when writing appears. Why does writing appear on tablets? Because these are the traditions that were passed down. The technologically advanced world of the pre-flood world, before the shock and abandonment period, everybody had tablets and they did things in Sumerian text. This isn't made up. The Sumerian text called them Mies. It is said that the Anuna could use the tablets to do all kinds of things. It's cargo cult phenomena. It's so simple. So after the flood, the first thing people do is cargo cult behavior. What do? They learn how to make tablets with clay and burn them in kilns after they've written on them in steel. They don't have the technologically advanced stuff, but they can't even imagine what the technologically advanced stuff was anyway. All they know is that their forefathers told them they need to preserve information and preserve knowledge on tablets. So they came up with a way to make tablets. They didn't have the cell phones and the technological means anymore that they've heard through the traditions of their forefathers, but they did have clay. So they took clay, they preserved information in it, and this is the origin of clay tablets. It is cargo cult phenomenon. It is a copy and carryover from a pre-existing idea of a more advanced civilization they had in contact, their ancestors had contact with. Remember, I tell you guys all the time, almost all historical compositions are post-reset writings. They are post-reset compositions. This is why they sound like Disney. They have details that are very advanced if you know what to listen for, but they always conveyed in very simplistic forms. It's just cargo cult. So now, 552 years later, civilization is thriving. The Heliolithic Maritime Empire is building megalithic shit. Why do you think? Archaics veterans, pay attention because you know this data. Why do you think there was a building craze in the weirdest places in the world? Why do you think they were building massive megalithic metropolises in inaccessible places on islands? Why were they doing all this? Because none of these things would serve to defend against invading human armies. We've discussed this in the past. All these weird megalithic constructions, gigantic blocks, they're putting them all over the place. The Heliolithic Maritime Empire was preparing for something, and they were in a building scheme program. They were going off. They were taking copper from the Michigan area. Oh yeah, they were mining copper as early as this period here. This is the 18 and 1700s BC, and then something happened. In the month of May, 1687 BC, the Ogygian apocalypse destroyed the entire world and caught every one of these civilizations flat-footed. They thought they had 48 more years. They were preparing for something big. Everywhere. Archaeologists, remember W.J. Perry's book, Children of the Sun? 551 pages. It's just a coincidence, but it's a 551 page book. And in that book, W.J. Perry from 1923 concluded, after studying, Children of the Sun is about Bronze Age civilization all over the world, connected to each other in weird ways by the ocean, having the same symbols, same traditions, same bloodlines. This man in 1923 dated the destruction of the entire world. He says, I don't know why, but all the civilizations and cultures that I have expounded upon in my work came to an end suddenly about 1688 BC. He never gave a reason. That's what I love W.J. Perry, because he stuck with what he knew. He gave us all the business on what they were doing, building all this shit, doing everything. They were working together. They're all over the world. Heliolithic Maritime Empire. And then he ends his book. I don't know why, but every single one of these cultures and every single one of these civilizations building these megalithic superstructures all ended about 1688 BC. No theory about a disease, no theory about a cataclysm, no theory about nothing. He just stuck with the facts. It's called the Avellino event, centered around Italy, one of the most epic volcanic eruptions in the last 4,000 years. The Avellino event buried cities all over Italy. We have found them. People think Pompeii and Herculaneum are the only buried volcanic cities, but it's not true. Italy has other ones archaeologists have found at even greater depths under layers and layers of ash and pumice. And I've talked about those in my Chronicon in prior presentations. But here is 1687 BC. The whole world's preparing for something. They're getting all these megalithic structures in place. And I'm telling you now, they were preparing to survive something they already knew from the past was going to happen. What was the world of their ancestors? It was a vapor canopy. So they're getting ready for a vapor canopy to come back, and they're building megalithic structures all over the world, getting ready. And what do archaeologists find? Archaeologists find that a single series of earthquakes leveled every civilization in the world that was building massive stuff and men left their workshops throwing their chisels and hammers on the ground. And archaeologists in areas all over the world have been baffled why the workshops And the largest stones were all found still in the quarries, untransported. Tiwanaku, Pumapunka, Easter Island, ruins around Olympia, the older areas of Baalbek, the Michigan copper fields. Archaeologists have found the hammers and chisels and tools and saws of the ancients in place right where they dropped them. Why would they all drop them in all these different locations at the same time? Because the entire world started shaking and they ran for their fucking lives. In the month of May, 1687 BC, as I've shown I've got like 8 videos just on this one event called the Ogygian Deluge. The world was flooded, but it was earthquakes and it was tsunamis, but it was the phoenix. When it appeared in the sky, it looked like a red dragon and it destroyed everything. They never had a chance to prepare for the next coming vapor canopy because they were still on a timeline that had ceased at the Great Flood. You see, the ancients knew of a calendar called a Ner. They knew a Ner was precisely 216,000 dragons, turnings of the stars. 216,000 days is exactly 600 years. The Sumerian Ner count is the origin of the Vedic Yuga system, which is also based off units of 216,000. Kali Yuga is 216,000 plus 216,000, which is 432,000 years. So we have a problem with 216,000 and 216,000 being the Kali Yuga is also 3 Mayan Bactans perfectly, 432,000 turnings of the stars. The ancient world's calendar was built on 600-year periods. 600-year periods. We know this for a fact. I've got several videos that explain it, but one video just on the Ner. We know that the Great Flood was the 3,000th year of the Anuna timeline. The Great Flood was the 600th year of Noah. That's in the Bible. It's in the book of Genesis. The Great Flood was the 600th year of Noah. But we know Noah was born on the 600th year of the appearance of the Anuna. The 600th year of the appearance of the Anuna was 3439 BC. 600 years later was 2839 BC, which is the birth of Noah. 600 years later was 2239 BC. All the math works perfectly. Perfectly. Remember, Enki, Enoch, Oannes, Vulcan, Etana, they're all the same person. They all appeared 12 centuries before the flood, 432,000 days. Well, 12 centuries is 600 plus 600. So all the math works. But 3,000 years before the flood is the beginning of the Anuna calendar. It's the beginning of the ancient India Yuga system as well. It's 5239 BC. 5239 BC plus 600 plus 600 plus 600 plus 600 plus 600 is 3,000 years. 3,000 years is the age of the gods in the Zoroastrian and ancient Greek Achaean literature. I've showed all this in my Chronicon. I'm just repeating shit from prior presentations. All the math fits perfectly. This is the system they were on. So what does it tell you? It tells you that they were aiming to protect themselves during the next vapor canopy cycle, which they thought was going to come in 1639 BC. They thought it was going to be 1639 BC. Why? Because that's 600 years after the flood, after the great flood of Noah. 600 more years is 1639 BC. But they were wrong because the Great Flood brought another cycle to the forefront called the Phoenix cycle. And it's 552 years. And that's the cycle we're going to look at now. Everything changed and caught them flat-footed. 48 years before an event that they thought was coming, a new vapor canopy, they got taken out. And this is why all this megalithic architecture has been found in ruinous conditions or half-buried ruined states. And it's why archaeologists have always been baffled that the hammers and the chisels at all these megalithic sites have been found in situ, as if everybody dropped their tools and ran. This also solves the mystery of why all these megalithic sites are at these really obscure and weird high altitude locations. It also solves the mystery. Well, I don't know if it solves that mystery. I may have went a little too far with that. I had another thought in my head. But yeah, all the tools dispersed, all the locations. But man, I had another thought in my head, but sometimes I go talking too fast. Don't laugh at me, Pamela Swan. Hell yeah, goat trophy. Man, thank you, Brian. That made up for my little hiccup just now. But yeah, they were preparing. That's all they were doing. The Heliolithic Maritime Empire was preparing by building all these structures. They were preparing for the return of a period when animals were going to get out of control and chicken eggs were going to turn into velociraptors. And and that's all they were doing. They were just trying, man, they were on point. But they were operating under a false calendar. They thought they were still under the Anuna Nur 600-year calendar, and they were not. That system ended with the Great Flood. It just ended. They thought they had 48 more years, but they didn't. In the 552nd year Phoenix cycle, all hell broke loose. If you don't know what really happened, this is a cataclysm that's confirmed by Dr. Barry Wormkessel, who called it Vulcan. In the book of Jasher, 1687 BC, is exactly when Jacob foreknew of the sun darkening, and he saved his sons by calling forth the sun to darken and stones to fall from the sky to kill 7 armies of the Canaanites. The people of Tiahuanaco in South America built their city in a time when they had predicted the coming of the sun disaster. So this is the Heliolithic Maritime Empire. It completely collapses. This is a new world age in ancient India. It's a yuga. It's a 25-year darkness and famine recorded over the Mediterranean and recorded over the ancient Americas. This is when Minoan linear A begins. A whole new alphabet appears after this destruction. A whole new alphabet totally appears after this destruction. It's called Minoan linear A. There's a giant object seen in the sky. The sons of the Sun dynasty all collapse worldwide. That's W.J. Perry, Book of Jasher. The bamboo books of China record this event. Marcus Varro, Augustine, Julius Africanus all record this event. This is the origin of the Kraken floods of Joppa and the sun darkening as Perseus in the Perseus legend. You know of this as Clash of the Titans. This is Easter Island is abandoned. This is the Avellino eruption of Vesuvius. This is also in the historical record known as the Second Intermediate Period of Egypt. Remember, Egyptologists got sticks up their butts. They're never going to agree that the Egyptian chronology has anything to do with any other chronology in the world. They're gonna keep it completely isolated. But this was a vast destruction throughout the entire world. But Egyptologists won't call it that. They'll just call it a period when there was no development and we don't have any records, then people stopped writing. Therefore, we're going to call it the Second Intermediate Period. Why is it the second? Because the Great Flood was the first Egyptian intermediate period. It's so dumb, but that's what they do. That's how scholars hide the facts. It's just so dumb. Are ribs better in a vapor canopy? I don't know, man. So this is the biblical dating. This period right here after 1687 BC is the biblical dating for the 7-year famine in Egypt in Genesis. So The biblical dating is 1659 to 1652 BC, which is during the 25-year darkness after the Ogygian deluge. So we have ancient records that explain that Greece, all the area of Greece, Achaia, that Boeotia, that area, it was abandoned for 189 years after the Ogygian destruction. Yeah, but God, remember, guys, I got 7 or 8 videos just about this one event. 552 years later is the year 1135 BC. You already know. You guys already know what happened. It is the watery end of the great civilization of Atlantis. But it's also something else. So, if 1687 BC brought a 25-year darkness, we need to go back to that real quick because we have the traditions of Hesiod. I forgot to tell you about. Because after the Ogygian deluge, we have a problem. Hesiod broke the world's history into the golden age, the silver age, the bronze age, and then before he brought the iron age in, Hesiod did something else no other ancient writers did. Other ancient writers had a golden age, silver age, bronze age, and iron age, but not Hesiod. Hesiod had the golden age, pre-flood world, Edenic paradise. Then he had the silver age, pre-flood world. That was pre-flood world leading all the way up to the shock and abandonment period. Then Hesiod, because he talks about the titans and the giants of the period. And then Hesiod goes into the bronze age, which is the post-Mulapan world. The flood of Noah. After the flood of Noah is the Bronze Age. And Hesiod goes into that. But Hesiod, unlike any other ancient author, adds an age that no one's ever heard of. Before bringing the Iron Age in, the Iron Age is the 4th age, but he's got an age that's not numbered tucked in between the bronze and the iron. What happened for him to tuck the age of giants and heroes? And he even describes it as a very short period of time. But the age of giants and heroes is tucked right into the Bronze Age before the Iron Age. And what do we have in the historical record? We have giants fighting in the Trojan War, in the battle against Thebes. After the Ogygian deluge, giants become a thing in the ancient world again. They are called the Fomorians, the Fomori, the Anakim. They are the Rephaim, the giants, Philistine giants like Goliath. This is what we have in the Bible as well. At this period of time, giants flood the historical narratives of the world where they had formerly disappeared. What WTF? What happened to bring giants back? For a short period of time, I'm going to tell you what happened. Every human born during that 25-year darkness grew up to be a giant, even though their parents were still normal, still alive. It's a failed vapor canopy. It was only here for 25 years, and it's not the first time. I mean, it is the first time, but it's not the only time that a 25-year darkness appeared and giants appeared again. We'll get to that. We'll get to that soon. Here's 1135 BC. Remember what happens during these vapor canopy events? The humans born during the event, their skulls grow longer, denser. They get taller. Yeah, humans conceived during these tertiary field events, they're very different. They're probably smarter, faster. They heal better, disease-free. They become the leaders. They're looked up to by everybody else. So here's 1135 BC. Phoenix comes back again in 1135 BC, just like Plato's narrative says. The Sea Peoples, who are the Atlanteans, they're having a war. They're fighting. They attack Egypt. They attack Athens. Athens was founded in 1365 BC. So it all fits. It all fits because Plato literally said, a small period of time passed from the Great War with Athens before, in a single night and a day, Atlantis sank beneath the sea. The island sank forever. Well, 1135 BC was a major phoenix cataclysm in the Mediterranean and Atlantic world. And guess what? It's only 94 years after the war for Troy. Remember, they didn't even fight over Helen. That's all mythological bullshit. They fought for the Hellespont, which was the island chains in between the gate to the Black Sea trade. That's what the whole war was about. It wasn't about some woman. It was about getting fleets into the Black Sea because there were those kingdoms that bordered the Black Sea were rich in trade, and the Hittites controlled the small little vassal state of Ilium, and the capital city of Ilium was Troa. So the Hittites gave the order not to let these fleets coming from the Atlantic. The fleets coming from the Atlantic, guys, they literally built a small civilization in southern Spain and in Sardinia. They used Sardinia as a way station. These are the Sea Peoples Federation. They attacked Egypt twice. This is the origin of the Phoenicians and the Philistines, and they came from ancient Ireland. And they were also known from a different historical perspective as the same people as the Tuatha Danann. These are the Danann, the people of the Danube. They made their exodus. They made their exodus from Egypt during a cataclysm. The Egyptians hated their guts and called them Typhonians because they had red hair. And the red hair was, well, to the Egyptians was indicative of having power, having the power of the sun. But the sun was venerated in ancient Egypt. So when they captured these sea peoples, and they sacrificed them under rituals called Typhonian, meaning phoenix. And I've already explained all this to you guys before. But yeah, this is like a nod toward ancient Ireland. That's where the Sea Peoples Federations were actually founded. They could have been in other areas and other colonies and coasts. And yes, they were heavily, densely packed in Sardinia. And Chardonnay is one of the Sea Peoples. One of the federated cultures of the Sea Peoples were the Chardin or the Chardonnay, depending upon which Egyptian text you read or temple. These are at Medinet Habu. So when you read this, you find out, oh, okay, Sardinia, but it wasn't the Sardinians. They were using Sardinia there. But this is why there's only two places in the ancient world that have these beautiful, amazing acoustic round towers. The ancient round towers of Ireland are not well known today, but there are books about how many thousands of these towers existed at one time. We don't know what their purpose was, but they definitely served a purpose that had something to do with sound and vibration. The doors are too small for people to go in. The towers are too high. The windows at the top were different sizes for different harmonic effects. But they were absolutely round and beautiful and super smooth, and they may be some type of vapor canopy technology. But they've only been found in two places in the world. Three, if you take a few examples. Thousands of them at one time were in Ireland. We have Cambyses, Giraldus Cambyses, whatever his name is, historian, said that 450 of these towers were destroyed in the Dark Ages. Imagine that. But the only other place they've been found in large numbers is Sardinia. But there is one other place where you can count. It's southern Spain, the Mediterranean Spain, close to the Pillars of Hercules. There have been a few found there as well, but that's only because they colonized the area too. So it's just on the way to Ireland. Anyway, moving on. 1135 BC. It's amazing, guys. It's 552 years after 1687 BC, which is 552 years after the Great Flood of Noah. The Great Flood of Noah was 1656 years after the Adam and Eve reset. 1656 is 552 plus 552 plus 552. What is going on? This is 1135 BC, the end of Atlantis and the Sea Peoples. Also confirmed by Dr. Barry Wormkessel, who called it Vulcan. The Tuatha Danann predicted the darkening of the sun before the Second Battle of Moytura, when they fought the giants. This is the Great Mediterranean Dark Age. Nothing I made up. All historians have done any type of antiquities antiquity studies on the Mediterranean know of this period. It is the Great Mediterranean Dark Age. Guess what appears? Oh no, guess what collapses now? Remember, the Ogygian deluge brought us Minoan linear A. But in that 552-year period, Minoan linear A became more advanced and became Minoan linear B, all during this period. But now Minoan linear B vanishes off the face of the earth in 1135 BC. And 300 years of illiteracy begins, or 250 years of illiteracy begins in the Mediterranean. In China, the mandate of heaven changes when an object darkened the sun and turned it blood red. Also, this was seen over Babylon as well, as recorded in the Omen texts. It's also recorded in the annals, in the regnal annals of King Nebuchadnezzar I of Babylon. There is a Mediterranean tsunami. There is dust rains, and the Atlantis civilization sinks, all ending in the final year of Pharaoh Seknakti, who wrote about the event and claimed that there was a great darkness descending upon the West. Now, 11, you know what? I wasn't going to show you anything on the screen, but I need to show you, because do we have evidence that after, or do we have evidence that around this period of time, the descendants of vapor canopy people were still around? Do we have evidence from let's say, ancient Egypt? Because these vapor canopies, they bring the long skulls back. They bring different changes in human, the human appearance. But in ancient Egypt, we have an anomaly that's at this period of time. It's very unusual. It's the fact that many centuries of Egyptian religion remained intact. And then all of a sudden, what in the hell happened that the rulers of Egypt lost all faith? They lost all faith in the Egyptian old gods. Do you have any idea how powerful the priest cults were throughout Upper and Lower Egypt? For all of a sudden, a pharaoh named Akhenaten to change his throne name to Akhenaten, to venerate the disk of the sun over all the other gods of Egypt. So critically dangerous was this move. This is called the Amarna period. This man had to put his capital in the middle of the desert, 210 miles from Upper Egypt, 200 something miles from Lower Egypt. He put it in the middle of the desert, the Amarna complex. Changed the religion, suppressed the priesthoods of Egypt. They hated his guts. But he changed Egyptian religion. It is the most anomalous period, inexplicable. What happened that this pharaoh was so fearful that he had to do away with all the gods of Egypt and create a state religion venerating the sun? Look how he and his wife look like. Look at them closely. I'm going to share them right now. Let's see here. All right. So this isn't a real good rendition of what I'm talking about. How'd that happen? Oh, I'm going the wrong way. This is Egyptian from the same period of time. Okay. So this is supposed to be a guy. He's got the same feminine body she's got, but it's supposed to be a guy. But look at their heads. Do the headdresses cover something else? Because this is a real popular theory in some circles. We've already found the long skulls, so you can't say those skulls didn't exist and people didn't have them. Now, I understand in uniformitarian anthropology, they like to gaslight you and try to explain. Jason, you don't know what you're talking about. These women, especially the Mayan and Incan women, would put a flat board on their baby's head, so it would grow that way, and the back of the skull would push out. And I'm like, man, shut the f up. Just shut up. Of course they did, because they were emulating something that they knew in real life. Everything is cargo cult phenomenon. Of course they did. They wanted their children to look like the gods, or who they perceived to be gods. But there were also people born this way, and there was no detection looking at the skulls that it was caused by flattening of the head like a bunch of Native American cultures used to do. So these are bad examples. I just did this at the last minute, but he's always looked freakishly weird. He has. All right. So those are bad examples, but I don't have time to show you all the skulls. We've seen them all. I've already showed you to the long skulls from the vapor canopy periods, but the Akhenaten period, the Amarna period is so weird. It's just so weird. There was a Phoenix event on the 138-year timeline in 1411 BC that was particularly bad, but it wasn't on the big 552 that we're looking at now, but it was pretty big for what happened in 1411. I got a lot, I've showed it to you before, but I've got a lot of historical references for that event. I left it out of here because it's not on the 552-year timeline, but it's a 1411 BC is on the 138-year timeline, and Phoenix was seen, and it was very well recorded. And I'm wondering if that event in 1411 didn't influence this guy to go ahead and change. Just he single-handedly changed all this, because he was right after that. The Amarna period is right after that, on the tail of that. He was alive. Yeah, this Pharaoh Akhenaten was alive when that event took place, and then he became Akhenaten. Changed the Egyptian religion. His reign didn't last long. They murdered him. I believe it was General Horemheb that murdered him. We don't know what happened to his wife. I don't know what happened to his wife. So it's just, hey, that's just theory, guys. I don't know, but it is a stain upon Egyptology that it's never been sufficiently explained why this guy just bucked and went totally different, went rogue, and it didn't last long. And it was during his period of time. Oh, that's the other detail I forgot to tell you. Emmanuel Velikovsky reveals it, but it was during this period of time, 1413 and 12th century BC, that the Egyptians feverishly climbed their own monuments. They even opened up old tomb complexes, and they went through their temples, and they chiseled out almost every reference to Typhon anywhere. It's like they magically thought that if we just get rid of all the references to Typhon, it will stop coming. So remember, Typhon destroyed the sun, the father of the sun, Osiris, during a goddess period, Isis. And the son of the sun was Horus, who became the last to enter the Egyptian pantheon. The sun became the last. Vapor canopy collapse. So what happens? Great Mediterranean Dark Age. After about 200 and something years, all of a sudden, the Greek culture in the Mediterranean begins to waken up. The Greek and Latin culture, Sabines, Etruscans, begins to awaken. We have Homer, Theognis, Hesiod, the great and earliest of the Greek writers, but they were writing epics and poems, like Works and Days, like Hesiod wrote his Theogony. Theognis wrote, or somebody, he also wrote Works and Days. Theognis wrote extensive writings, and you already know Homer wrote the Odyssey and the Iliad. But they're very mythological in tone, but they discuss the titans and the giants, and they go through the history of the sea peoples, and everything's there. But it's just, remember what I tell you, always keep in mind Homer, Theognis, and Hesiod are merely putting out post-reset compositions. They're coming out of a primitive period of illiteracy, and they themselves are describing everything in comical mythological garb. But if you know how to filter out the fantasy and just deal with the core facts, they're describing some rather advanced concepts. So this we've discussed many of these things in Archaics, but this is the period of time. 800 BC, Great Mediterranean World awakens. So what happens? The Greek calendar begins in 776 BC, the Olympiad calendar, based off 4-year periods. It was a post-Dark Age calendar. Then right after that, 753 BC, the ancient city of Rome is founded on the ruins of a pre-existing city on one of the 7 hills, Septimontium, of ancient that area of ancient Rome. So these are huge. This is the Greek and Latin world beginning right around this time, coming out of a dark age. So 1135 BC, Atlantis is gone. Second Battle of Moytura. The Danen of ancient Ireland destroy the giants and take the island. So 552 years later, from that is 583 BC, when the sun darkened, but it was predicted by one of the 7 wise men of Greece named Thales of Miletus, an Ionian who was Phoenician by remote descent. Phoenician, sea people, Irish. Now, Thales predicted the sun darkening. He had the information, just like the Danen, his ancestors, had that information as well about when this event occurs and the sun darkens. He didn't predict the day. This is not an eclipse by the moon. He predicted the year. He predicted 2 years in advance that it was going to happen. And it happened in the month of May. Like every Phoenix episode always happens in the month of May, man. Oh, man, thank you for that, man. Now, this is in the Vandenberg data, and what's interesting is that suddenly, after 583 BC, the very next year, the Delphic Oracle announces the institution of a new calendar. What? What's the Delphic Oracle know? Why was 583 BC the final year of a previous Delphic Oracle epic? Why? Also at this time, the Japanese imperial period of the Sons of the Sun begins. Also is recorded the eclipsed sun on a monument at Yassilikaya, Turkey, which commemorates the day that the sun darkened and stopped a battle between the Medes and the Lydians, witnessed by King Nebuchadnezzar II of Babylon. Remember, King Nebuchadnezzar I of Babylon witnessed the sun darkening in 1135 BC. I believe that Nabopolassar was given the throne name Nebuchadnezzar II because of this event. It's the only thing that makes sense to me. So, 552 years after 583 BC is the epic year of 31 BC. A sky dragon is seen over Egypt. Greece, a fiery torch is seen in the sky for many days. An earthquake in Asia Minor. In Tralles in Lydia, which is Turkey, Phrygia. And many cities in Ionia fall by earthquake. Mysia and Aetolia. Macedonians record a continental quake from the Aegean to Judea in the month of May during the Civil War Battle of Actium. Olympia in Greece is terribly shaken by an earthquake. The worst earthquake in Jerusalem's history is in the month of May in 31 BC. This is the Phoenix, guys. The Yucatan is completely ruined. It is the final date. It is the final date on an Olmec date stele, with the Mayan long count date equivalent to our 31 BC. You can't make this shit up. I didn't date any of these things. You guys know that. You guys know I got all my material cited in Chronicon. I didn't date any of this shit. The last date the Olmec ever published on their giant date steles was 31 BC in our calendar. Emperor Augustus implemented a new Egyptian calendar starting for the year 30 BC. Undisputed Greek authority Robert Graves claimed that this was a new Phoenix age. I didn't make shit up. All of this came out of the historical record. 552 years after 31 BC was 522 AD. The Dark Ages begins. This is the beginning of the Great Justinian Darkness period. Oh, which happened to be 25 years. Vapor canopy returned for 25 years at least, perhaps as long as a century. We just don't know, because all written records basically collapsed or were written ex post facto, meaning we don't have copies from this period. We have copies from a later period claiming that they were composed in this period, which is highly suspect. And this is the problem Fomenko has as a chronologist, Illig has as a chronologist, Alexander Del Mar has a chronologist, and Jason Brashears as a chronologist also has a problem with the Dark Age period, because it seems like all the records were written ex post facto, and we don't actually have any manuscripts or texts or books from this period, because something epic happened. The Great Justinian Darkness. The Great Justinian Darkness is also the period, maybe I should show you this, but it's also the period that theoretical physicist Paul Laviolette, PhD, recorded was the only time in history that had ever experienced such gamma ray saturations. You guys want to see that chart? You want to see the scientist Paul Laviolette's chart showing that he plotted in the last 6,000 years all the gamma ray saturations. That's what he recorded. So I, in turn, took those. Let me find this chart. I gotta find this chart. I made a chart out of these because it's very, very interesting. These gamma ray saturations. I have two charts on this, actually. Oh, I do have two charts. But there's just one. One is just a blow up of the other. I know you guys want to see that chart. There's no way in hell you don't. All right. So the Dark Ages experienced something our world, well, we already know what the gamma does. Remember the Hulk? Yeah, gamma radiation made the Hulk big and green. Yeah, the Hulk was a vapor canopy human. So here's Nemesis X chronology, all 60-year visitations. Each visitation is 60 years. Here is Paul A. Laviolette, PhD, shows that the historic spacing of cosmic ray peaks in the geologic record has gamma ray bursts bathing Earth 14 times in the last 6,000 years. I show you all the Nemesis periods compared to his approximates of gamma ray visitation. Some of them are dead accurate. It's so scary. Some of them are so dead accurate. But look at the Dark Ages. In the Dark Ages, we got a problem. 500 AD. Look at the gamma ray saturations of our world that happened right here. Why is this significant? Look at the last one. The last time gamma radiation saturated our world and was embedded in the rocks was about 1030 AD. Why is this significant? Look at the Dark Ages. During the Dark Ages, I know this is unbelievable for people new to my channel and you have not actually seen the artifacts, seen the traditions, read the reports. I get it. But this gamma ray saturation area is exactly where archaeologists date all of these prehistoric prehistoric figurines, rocks, totem poles, all this evidence of gigantic reptiles, gigantic amphibians, gigantic avians, birds, pterodactyls, pterodons, all these icon statuary. It's like the world went land of the lost, flea stack version during this period. It is so weird. This is the period that has all these chronologists, including myself, questioning. Now, where I diverge from them is that I can show that no years have been lost. History has been scrubbed to hide this period. Before these gamma ray saturations, Christianity had already gone through so many councils. It had already been standardized. They already knew out of 3,000 ancient texts, they knew which ones were going to be the 66 books of the Bible. Before 500 AD, they had already standardized the Old and New Testament. They knew what it was. They already had the advanced doctrines, predestination. They had all these doctrines in the Bible. They already had like Mary worship was starting to filter in. They knew they had already gone to war with the gnosis, the spiritual branch of Christianity that accepted the idea of Christ and Him crucified, but only from an intellectual, spiritual perspective, because the gnosis knew Jesus was not a historical identity. He was a concept. But by 500 AD, the doctrines were in place, the books were in place. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John had Jesus' story all the way outlined. The church had become more sophisticated. They were already proselyting European countries. By 522 AD, when the Dark Ages started, Christianity was advanced in its doctrines. But after this period of gamma ray saturations, on the other side of 1030 AD right here, Christianity became retarded. It was stupid. The saints had X-Men abilities over reptiles, snakes, and water. All the saints had these badass abilities over water, reptiles, and all that bullshit. In the church, and different churches adopted different saints, and they had different relics. And Christianity got stupid. And Jesus was Lord of the mushrooms, and nothing made sense anymore. Nothing. All these knights were fighting giant snails in the ark, and all the churches had. You gotta understand, it's a very ancient concept to put these dragons and gargoyles on the architecture because they're wards. If you've got something that looks evil, it will keep evil away. So during this period, right after the gamma ray saturations were over, in 1030 AD, all of a sudden Christian churches appeared all over the areas, and they had these demons, gargoyles, serpents with water spouts all over Europe. Churches appeared with men slaying giant rabbits and men slaying giant dragons, serpents. And it was exactly during this period that the Vikings emerged in their fleets. And you've been sold a lie about Viking history. Always show, all the movies show Vikings always in the damn ice, always, and they're legends of the frost giants, and they have, you've been sold some bullshit. Because the earliest and the preserved text about Viking warfare, they fought giant lizards. They fought velociraptors called the Grendels. Yeah, they were known for it. This is what the whole Epic of Beowulf was about. The Vikings began their career in the fens and the bogs and in the swamps, and they fought reptiles. The Vikings were the new mariners that appeared in the world, just like the cycle before. When Enki appeared with men with armor and weapons and tools and had all this big deal. Because I'm going to tell you now, in our iteration of the same cycle, the Vikings were the civilization bearers. Because as soon as these gamma ray saturations were over and all these giant creatures were no longer hunting people, and believe me, they were. If you haven't seen my presentation showing you everything humans were making back then, stegosauruses on Asian temples, there's so much. All over the world during the Dark Ages, people were protecting themselves from large creatures. So here we have, do you see this date, 1030 AD? The last gamma ray saturation was 1030 AD. So let's look at this other chart. see what we see, because it's going to be profound. Here's the next chart. If you don't think the Dark Ages is a period that's absolutely covered up and we're gaslit about what really happened, pay attention to this chart. As soon as that gamma radiation was over with, the Vikings settled down. Look, see the black period? This black circle is the gamma ray. This is the Dark Ages, gamma ray saturations, according to a physicist who measured this stuff. This whole period is saturated, but it's also the only time in world history, in 58 centuries of documented world history, that both Phoenix on a 138-year timeline and Nemesis X on a 792-year timeline are here in the same year. What happened in the pre-flood world when Nemesis X came right behind Phoenix? A 414-year vapor canopy. Remember the shock and abandonment period? Everybody's building giant effigies to the sky. What did archaeologists date to that period? All the giant trees that are in the world today are survivors from that period. Also, what did archaeologists date to that period? The Akambaro figurines. 35,000 figurines of humans interacting with dinosaur-like creatures. And they're authentic. That period. Here's the exact same period again, but in our iteration of the cycle. Vapor canopy is right here. This is a vapor canopy world. Right here. Started by Phoenix and Nemesis. I don't know how long it lasted. Even if it was only 25 years, the parthenogenetic effects filled the world with giant reptiles, giant amphibians, giant insects, giant plants. And what happened? Gamma ray saturation over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Gamma ray saturations. Then all of a sudden, look at this. Here's 1030. Here's 1030. The last gamma ray saturation. This is 1030 right here. Uh-oh. It looks like European and world civilization just started coming out of a deep slumber at this time. And the Vikings, who were fighting grindles and sailing the seas, fighting giant sea serpents and living in their ships because it was too dangerous to be on land, suddenly landed on European shores. And what did they do? Because it was the Normans, who were the Vikings, that started rebuilding all of Europe. They were master builders. Look what happened. As soon as the last gamma ray saturation was over, all this happened. This is the human historical record. I didn't date a single thing. Stone castle building begins. Crusade wars, who were the main warriors in the Crusades? Vikings. They were Normans. They took northern France, Normandy, as their own Viking kingdom. Here it is, right here, Crusade Wars. They took off. What else took off? Oh, 1088, University of Bologna. 1092, Pisa Cathedral's built. 1106, Speyer Cathedral. 1133, Durham Castle. 1145, St. Denis Cathedral. 1150, Paris University. 1167, Oxford University. What in the hell is going on? Why weren't any of these things ever built back here when we were building colosseums, when we were building gigantic constructions during the Greco-Roman period, and all of a sudden the world came to a stop? This is Fomenko's problem, because this is Jason's problem. This is Illig's problem. Yeah, there's so many different chronologists that have a problem with this period because it's all invented. All the historical shit in this period, most of it is invented. And if any of it's truthful, it doesn't matter. It's still written 500 years later. We don't have original manuscripts for this period. And Christianity got stupid. It got dumb. It became Jesus, Lord of the Mushrooms, and saints had X-Men abilities. And all the heroes were fighting giant lizards, salamanders, and dragons. This is what came out of this period. But it only takes 200 years. And look, all of a sudden, civilization is thriving. As soon as the last gamma ray burst is over with, civilization is thriving. Building everything. The rest of this chart is all about other shit. All right, I got so many charts in here. I don't need to show them all. I'm not in chart mode right now. I want to get these details out. What is this? 2 hour, 3 hours. I've been doing this 3 hours. It only felt like 30 minutes. My God. All right. So we get through we know that archaeologists have dated the Ica stones to the Dark Ages. They had a thick patina on them. We know that that's about 40,000 stones that are legitimate. They show anatomically correct stegosaurs, triceratops, pterodactyls, brontosaurus, tyrannosaurus rex, and sometimes all on the same stone. But there's humans domesticating them. There are humans dressing them, putting saddles on them. There are humans doing all this. Yeah, they're not fake. There is even one historical reference to the Spanish conquistadors being mystified by these dragon stones. They sent them to Spain with the gold on their galleons. So the Dark Ages was full, apparently, of large lizards and mushrooms. And then the Dark Ages ends. When the Dark Ages ends, what happens? The Middle Ages. In the Middle Ages, we begin building all kinds of things, but through the entire Middle Ages, we have fantastic stories of singular incidents out in the wild where people come across dragons and they kill them. Because we are now in an ice age, we're not in a vapor canopy anymore. When the Dark Ages is over, we have emerged. There's been fundamental changes. In the Dark Ages, the Mayan civilization ended. They vanished. We don't know what happened to them. They left their cities and the jungles took over their cities. They vanished. They disappeared. 522. So real short, for 522, the Dark Ages, we have C.E. Britain on the reign of Octa of Kent in 522, records a strange dragon appearing in the sky. We have the Welsh Annals records a sky dragon. 522 is the 60th year of Nemesis X. Earthquakes devastated Olympia, Greece, just like they did 552 years earlier in 31 BC. Sky dragons were seen over Britain, a celestial war of monsters, and they rained great drops of blood, followed by famine. Remember, Phoenix brings red rain, red dust, or red mud. It all depends on the humidity. Old records of Kent record that a strange star appeared, attached to a tiny ray of light that ended in a flaming dragon. Yeah, man, these records claim that it was a celestial war of monsters. This year marks the vanishing of the Mache culture of Peru. Gunnar Heinsohn, another chronologist, Gunnar Heinsohn concludes that some celestial super monster returned from the 3rd century AD. And remember, we do have a smaller Phoenix event on the 138-year periodicity in the 3rd century AD. So he said whatever it was, it's the same one that visited in the 3rd century AD, like a terrible comet. Also remember, your calendar today, the Anno Domini calendar, was created from this event. 526 AD, the beginning of the Anno Domini calendar. I show you the research of chronologist Alexander Del Mar, published in the year 1900, where he explains that the Roman Catholic Church changed the calendar to hide from the public an epoch and a period of time. And he said that period of time that was censored was 552 years. You can't make this shit up. I've already showed this on my channel in the video called Anno Domini Calendar or some shit. I can't remember the name of the video, but it's got Anno Domini in the title. Can't make this shit up. So 414 years later, remember 414 was the exact amount of how long the vapor canopy lasted in the pre-flood world, ending at the Typhon flood, the day the sky fell. Noah's flood, 2239 BC. But now, 414 years after 522 AD, is 936 AD. This is the 414th year of the Dark Ages. Belgium records an obscuration of the sun that lasted 17 days. That's not an eclipse. 17 days the sun went dark. It started with the sky being clear, then it turned blood red, and in the clear sky, armies were seen fighting in the sky. A mountain in Saxony belched flames. It's a volcano in a German province. Probably never seen one up there before. This is in the Chronicles of it's not Magdeb. That's just an abbreviation, but it's the Chronicles of Magdeb or something. I can't remember. But I have a whole video on these chronicles showing you massive amount of data from them. It's just incredible. So the sun goes dark and becomes like blood. A plague followed and the death of many people. The sun like blood is also seen over Ireland. So this is 936 AD, a massive destruction from Scandinavia to the Black Sea. That entire area from Scandinavia to the Black Sea, all the way into Mesopotamia, Iraq. There is a great destruction. Earthquakes, cities getting pancaked, going underground. Poland is devastated. Depopulation throughout northern Europe. Bulgaria's metropolis, Pliska, was covered in erosion material. Remember, this is 936 AD. What does that mean to you? It means it's right there in the smack dab toward the end of the gamma ray saturation that's been recorded in the rocks during the Dark Ages. Whatever's afflicting our world, these people were getting the business. So Bulgaria's metropolis called Pliska was covered in erosion material. Remember, Phoenix brings carbonaceous fallout. So Gunnar Heinsohn concludes some celestial supermonster that appeared in the 3rd century AD and in the 6th century AD, starting the Dark Ages, also appeared in the 930s. So Gunnar, just going through European records, this chronologist made the connection between 3 separate events that we know in archaics were all Phoenix events. He doesn't know shit about the Phoenix, and yet he still concluded the correct information. He links the cataclysms of the 3rd century, the 6th century, and the 10th century to volcanoes. Vulcans. Phoenix events. It's beautiful. So 276 years later, civilization is interrupted again. Everybody started building. They started building their castles. Universities are founded. Cathedrals have started construction. The Vikings are no longer in the sea. The Crusade. It's already been over 150 years since the Crusades. Europeans are building cities and infrastructure, canals, and then all of a sudden 1212 AD comes, another Phoenix year. 1212 AD, a tsunami. The actual Atlantic rises and pulls 306,000 people in Holland out to sea and drowns them. It's a tsunami. Earthquakes are in Iceland. France, a colored rain fell and a haloed cross was seen across the sky. A red aurora was seen and veered over England. A shower of blood at Caen. 3 crosses were seen in the sky over Falaise. Novgorod, Russia. There were early frost in the year that destroyed the harvests. Children were sold as slaves for bread. Mass human vanishings. Quakes in the Middle East. Vanishings covered up in the tradition of the Children's Crusade. I've talked about this. This is when the church and state invented a lie. They could not be seen as not having answers because the people were in a panic. All across Europe, people wanted to know what happened to their children. Children vanished. So church and state came up with a plan, and they described it as the Children's Crusade. They said, look, you guys, the adults couldn't take Jerusalem back from the Muslims. So all these children got together and decided to march themselves because they figured, well, they're the children of God. Their moms and dads couldn't do it, so the prophecies must mean the children of God had to go take Jerusalem. So they took up arms. There's no way the families would have ever let their children. You know how dangerous Europe was back then for children to be walking down roads by themselves. Now, yeah, so many thousands of children vanished that the church and state invented the Children's Crusade to cover for their disappearance. But a flaming cross was seen across the sky of Germany. 1212 AD, Tartaria officially enters the historical record as a geographical location recognized by foreign powers. I've showed that in old books. I showed you the actual pages where that's said in old books. 1212 was a phoenix year. So 138 years later, which is on the Phoenix timeline, is the year 1350. And we have a really unusual story again. And you're told in the history books an absolute lie about this event. The Great Black Death that killed 1/3 of the human race from 1347, 1348, and 1349. Well, 1350 was a Phoenix year, but so is 1349. You guys know our years go from January to December. So the Phoenix years do not. They start in the middle of May. So a Phoenix year is the middle of May and the last half of May, all the way around the calendar to the next year, the first half of the month of May. That's how a Phoenix year works. It's May to May. So 13 so the event that we're waiting on right now begins in May of 2039, and it goes all the way through to May of 2040. That's how Phoenix years are. Anyway, the Great Black Death killed 1/3 of the human race. The Great Black Death is linked right here mathematically to the Phoenix phenomenon. So, have we been lied to? Have we been lied to about how the Great Black Death happened, and has it been stretched to years earlier than it really? I mean, it's like 2 years off. I don't know. Maybe it's a Phoenix event, maybe it's not. Maybe it's not. But you've been told rats on ships from China and India infected European ports and spread the plague, but that's not true. There's 2 items you need to know about the Great Black Death. The bubonic plague, whatever they want. It might not even been the bubonic plague, what killed everybody. But the entire world was reset. 1/3 of the world died. This is where a lot of the catacombs come from, that human skeletons have been found packed into the corridors. They weren't put in there alive. Some of them were still alive. They were infected. But yeah, cities didn't have the manpower nor the resources to bury tens of thousands of people. There are historical records about this killing tens of thousands of people in each city. Whole villages getting decimated. The problem is that the death came from the sky. You're told in the historical in the books of today, you're told that rats from ships infected everybody. That's not what the historians of the day said. They said that cigar-shaped entities appeared in the sky and their bellies opened and dumped decomposing body parts of forest animals as if they had been chopped up real into pieces and then left to decompose and fester, and then they were dumped all over period places of Europe. This is the historical record. These are verifiable sources through military historian William Brambley. No rats from ships or mice from ships spread the plague. The death came from the sky. This is the historical record. So I'm just telling you, it sounds terrible, guys, but it's a Phoenix year. Now, 90 years later, 90 years after 1/3 of the world's population died, The printing press was invented in 1440. 90 years after that, by 1530, it was used to mass produce Bibles and religious and government books. So I'm telling you now, museums and cathedrals still have in their possession Gutenberg Bibles, all Latin Vulgate, printed from the year 1455. The reason I'm telling you that, you guys know my oldest Bible, I've showed it off, is from 1664, 2 years before the Great Fire of London, and it was printed in London. My old Bible came from overseas. I'm in Texas, so my Bible was printed before the Great Fire of London in 1664. The Great Fire was in 1666. My Bible was printed in London, so it's traveled a long distance to get to me. It's traveled through space and time. But these Gutenberg Bibles from 1455, there were 150 of these printed. And they're gold. They got chains on them. They got gold gilt. The reason I'm telling you that these still exist is because you can go see them in cathedrals all over Europe. You can see original 1455. They've preserved them. A lot of them are in glass. They're opened up. But you can see, the reason I'm stressing this is because we haven't had a true cataclysmic reset since then. My library is full of books from the 1700s. I got two books from the 1600s. Then I got a bunch of them from the 1700s. You guys know I got hundreds from the 1800s. I got a bunch of pre-Civil War books and post-Civil War. But there are still books around from 1455. The reason this is critical to understand is because the maps from this same period of time up into the 1500s clearly show Greenland and Antarctica with no ice. They got trees and canals and there's ships going back and forth. And these are what the maps show, and it's several maps. And as I've shown on my channel, maps dated to this period also show giant reptiles, amphibians, giant humans, and giant birds. We know they're giant birds because on one of these maps, it shows a giant bird carrying an elephant off of Antarctica. And it shows ships going back and forth from South America and Antarctica. I've shown these maps. These maps show that there's multiple maps from different time periods by different cartographers, all showing the same thing. No ice on Antarctica. So what happened to the 2-mile high ice pack? Where did it go? How did cartographers get the contours of the continent perfect? Like on the Zeno brothers map of 1380, how did they even know Antarctica was actually two land masses? Because it's covered in ice pack, you can't tell. But the U.S. Navy, well, no, it wasn't the U.S. Navy, it was U.S. Geological Survey, actually found out through subsurface interface radar that Antarctica is two islands. How did that happen? Not only that, but we have over 50 maps. You know it because I've showed you them. We have over 50 maps concerning the area of the world where are located the gigantic trees of the bristlecone pines, the coastal dawn redwoods, and the redwoods and the dawnwood pines. Damn it, I get them. The coastal redwoods and the dawnwood pines and the bristlecone pines. These three gigantic trees are all dated to the vapor canopy right before the Typhon flood. They're still living today. But they're in an area of the world that over 50 maps that I've showed you guys from this period right here show California as an independent island from North America, completely independent. Major changes have happened to our world in the last 600 years. The Dark and the Middle Ages are over. The Renaissance period begins, and so does our modern advancement after so many resets. We've been reset over and over and over. Every time we're coming out of a period, we get hit again. And these resets are always covered up in natural disasters. Phoenix phenomenon has been documented in the year 1626, but it wasn't a systemic reset, but we have Phoenix phenomenon data for that year. 1763 and 1764 was a perfect Phoenix year. We have a German gazette that literally shows magnificent, horrific, and gigantic objects in the sky over Europe. You've seen that on my channel. I've showed it many times. It's 4 pages. It dates from 1764, but it's showing what Europeans were looking up in the sky in 1763 when blood drops rained, the sun went dark, and these huge objects appeared. Scared the shit out of them. That's Phoenix year. Again, you guys know I've got 7 or 8 videos on 1902 and all the amazing phenomena that happened all over the world that international news agencies blanket, it was blanket censorship. But what have I been telling you guys for years? All you got to do is look at the microfiche, Google the local events that happened in your area for the years 1901, from May 1901 to May 1902. Just Google what happened in your local area. You'll come up, you guys already know, in Underground, we got a whole section about 1902. Everybody pulling up all this amazing shit because none of it was reported internationally. But on the local level, everybody was reporting the most incredible, fascinating, weird shit. 1902 was a Phoenix year. Massive edits, massive time-space, weird occurrences. One time travel story that just blows your mind about these 2 women who taught at Oxford and Yale and what happened to them at that time. Yeah, this 1902 is amazing. 1902 unleashed hundreds of new products into the field. Yeah, all these things just suddenly appeared in 1902. It's amazing. Harley Davidson appeared in 1903. I just had to throw that in there. You guys have seen the data. New people don't even know, man. You got to know. You got to go to my Phoenix playlist to get all this badass information. This is just an overview going through because it only takes us 200 years to go from horse and buggy to Hadron Collider. It does. 1764 was massive amount of objects. I got them all listed. I'm not going to read them. I've already gone through it in videos over and over and over and over. There was no reset at all in the 1600s, in the 1700s, in the 1800s. We have to look back. We have to look back to the 1500s or 1400s for the last time there was a serious reset. But with the printing press and the Gutenberg Bibles and all that, I'm not even sure that's far enough back. Remember, in the pre-flood world, there was a 624-year period of sun in the pre-flood world between the 2 vapor canopy periods. Remember that? So we may be in that 624-year period right now, which would explain that the maps in the 1520s and then the 1400s that all show ice-free Antarctica, and the Zeno map 1380 that shows ice-free Antarctica, Greenland, would be basically we're looking at an event. It might have been 936. It might have been 1200s, 1212, somewhere in there. We had the collapse of another vapor canopy. Remember, the Dark Ages wasn't the last vapor canopy. There's another hiatus that doesn't make sense. There may have been another small vapor canopy appearing after 936 to 1074 AD, because that is a Phoenix year on the 138-year timeline. We have some really anomalous, it doesn't make sense. The Dark Ages was not the last vapor canopy. Something happened after that as well. But maybe it was the last vapor canopy and navigators just kept maps for 500 years. Maybe they had copies of maps for over 500 years. I don't know. But I do know this. Graham Hancock's version of ice-free maps of Antarctica is because navigators from the Younger Dryas period in the last ice age, they mapped Antarctica when it was ice-free, before the ice age even began 30,000 years ago. And when the cartographers mapped this ice-free, they made sure that those paper maps would be well preserved, as people made copies of 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 copies. Don't I sound like a dumbass? Doesn't that sound ridiculous? Wouldn't it offend Occam's razor? It's so stupid. Maps from the 1520s that show ice-free Antarctica is because there was no ice in the 1520s or the 1510s or the 1480s. Antarctica was something else. Greenland was something else. California was something else. It only takes 200 years. When we're left alone, when we are completely left to our own devices, it only takes 200 years to go from horse and buggy to Hadron Collider. It takes a reset to retard our development. Arrested development is due to vapor canopies. This is the history of the world. If you think this video covers all the evidence, you're mistaken. This is an overview of what we have documented in Archaics. But that's my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. It only takes 200 years to go from horse and buggy to Hadron Collider, and we know there's plenty of evidence that we have been technologically advanced before. But if this series of events is true that I just showed you, then it means 13 years from now, a new vapor canopy begins to appear. 14 years from now, it will be intact. The next Phoenix year is May 2039 to May 2040. It is followed 6 years later by Nemesis X on its 792-year periodicity. You can't make this shit up. This is the sixth sky dragon of Mother Shipton, who said 2 sky dragons are coming back to back in the last days. This is the 6th seal of the apocalypse. When the seal is broken, the sun turns black as sackcloth of hair. The moon turns blood red. The stars fall from the sky as the heavens roll like a scroll. As all the people go and hide in the dens and the mountains and the caves, and they try to hide from the face in the sky. Can't make this shit up. I sure didn't. All I did was put it together. That's all I did. But if you're listening to anybody out there who's trying to tell you that answers lie in the Younger Dryas, you're a dumbass for listening to them. That's my presentation, guys. Thank you for all the jewels. I still don't know what they mean. I'm going to Google it. Thank you, Dr. 44. I saw that come in, man. You're a blessing, bro. I will see you guys in the underground, man, because every Tuesday, Chat Tuesday, we're going 3 hours Q&A in the underground. If you're not in the underground, dude, all my research is posted in the underground. You can go deep. You can go straight to every topic you want to and just and find an amazing amount of shit in the underground. But that's it. I'm gonna check out. I've been talking so much. I'm gonna check out. I done got hungry. But I do love you guys. Thank you for hanging tight. I know this is a long one for an overview. Ciao.